quote, a witch hunt trying to take down the leading candidate by far in the Republican Party. Andrea Bernstein, NPR News, New York.
Much of California is still getting walloped by a winter storm. Heavy snow is falling in mountainous areas. Heavy rain is falling in lower elevations. That's melting a lot of snowpack and raising concerns about flooding. Kim George is a battalion chief for South Lake Tahoe Fire and Rescue. She says the heavy snow is still causing people's roofs to collapse.
Some of these shaded neighborhoods have probably 8-10 feet in the city, and the county areas even more so. With all of the snow load and the amount of weight that's sitting on roofs, we have some pretty significant concerns coming up with roof snow load with all the rain.
That audio is courtesy of KGO. Stocks are mixed on Wall Street. The Dow is up 30 points. The Nasdaq is down more than 40. This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Commuters on all lines of the MBTA are dealing with mandatory slowdowns today and for the next few days at least. So says Interim T General Manager Jeff Gonaville. Last night's announcement seemed to come out of nowhere. Gonaville says the slowdowns are due to safety concerns based on something that was discovered last night during an inspection of one of the lines. He said some of the equipment that's used to inspect the lines did not have the proper documentation. He added that further inspections are needed and that they could take a day or two at least. And isn't it ironic that today's press conference with the MBTA was delayed? President Biden's budget proposal includes $350 million to replace the Bourne and Sagamore bridges. Senator Ed Markey calls the budget request a good first step, acknowledging the funding in this budget is not a done deal.
We're going to work hard to ensure that we get this funding appropriated through Congress so we can move this project forward and deliver it to the people of Cape Cod. And Senator Warren and Congressman Keating and I are committed to getting this job done.
That funding is nowhere close to the project's estimate of $4 billion. Earlier this year, the federal government denied the state's grant application to replace the bridges. Biden's budget faces opposition from the Republican-controlled House. In sports, the Bruins and Celtics both off until tomorrow. Exhibition baseball, Red Sox play the Blue Jays today. Sunny and near 50 today, cloudy mid-30s overnight. Maybe a few snowflakes tomorrow, high near 40. It's 43 right now.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include CrowdStrike, whose cybersecurity platform is designed to protect organizations by monitoring trillions of cyber events to detect threats and prevent breaches before they happen. CrowdStrike, protection that powers you.
I'm Henry Santoro, GBH News 89.7.
Rowdy, I am Marjorie Egan. You are listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are at the Boston Public Library, as we are every Friday, and we are streaming at facebook.com/GBH News. Hi, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. How are you?
Excellent, thank you.
So today marks 3 years since then Governor Charlie Baker announced a state of emergency for COVID-19. It was one day before the World Health Organization declared a global pandemic, an acknowledgement that the virus would change everything for everyone. Here's Governor Baker then.
Today, I'm declaring a state of emergency in Massachusetts. This declaration will give our administration more flexibility to respond to this evolving outbreak. China and other countries that saw early outbreaks are making progress in pushing back against the disease. But it's only possible if everybody plays their part. And it's only possible if step-up mitigations happen now.
And he went on to say, in what was really haunting, non-essential businesses should close down, employees should not go to work. You know, so much of that period was surreal in a way none of us had ever experienced. There was Trump with the bleach, power washing our groceries and takeout containers, was waking up at 4 a.m, refreshing the state's COVID vaccine website, padlocks on local parks, the idea that we'll all be over in weeks, and of course, 20,000 plus deaths in Massachusetts, more than 1 million in the United States, nearly 7 million families worldwide lost somebody they loved. Now, here we are 3 years after that day in 2020. Where were you then, and where are you now, and how are you changed as a result of these 3 years? The number to call or text is 877-301-8097. You know what I looked up this morning?
What?
not that there was not a horrible political division even before COVID, but it was so much exacerbated because of the truly homicidal behavior of Donald Trump. Today, 75% of the Republicans in a Gallup poll say the COVID issue is over. Only 28% of Democrats say it's over, a 50% split. And I was thinking this morning as preparing for this, remember how we celebrated grocery workers? Everybody who had to go to work, that lasted for about a minute and a half. But you know what did last? I think the incredible courage and strength of Anthony Fauci as compared to Deborah Birx, who basically became a sycophant for Donald Trump and his sickness weakness around the
I mean, there were so many
disease.
moments when you think about it, like where you were. I mean, I remember going out. It's my youngest daughter's birthday today. Happy birthday, Caroline.
Oh, happy birthday, Caroline.
And the night before her birthday, we went out to Myers and Chang to have dinner. And then, you realize that this disease is here and it's probably spreading, and you're thinking you're like packed in because it's a very popular restaurant, very close. And that was the last time we went out for dinner for like months and months and months, right?
I'd say more than months.
We were all getting takeout. I remember going that you remember the big deal about is you mentioned in the introduction, especially if you had elderly relatives who didn't really know how to operate let's get on the website and get the vaccine, sign up for the vaccine, that people would be up until 2 and 3 in the morning, like refreshing their pages for their elderly parents who couldn't get it. Remember, did you go to Gillette to get a vaccine?
I did indeed.
Yeah, I went to Gillette to get a vaccine.
Remember who solved well, that's actually, we should play the sound. Remember when Governor Baker, I was convinced he wasn't going to show up this day.
Yeah.
Baker was scheduled to be on our show in the studio the day that the website crashed, which was day one. And here's a little bit of some very memorable comments from Charlie Baker.
My hair's on fire about the whole thing. I can't even begin to tell you how pissed off I am. And we know how important it is for people to have it fixed and to be able to access all those new appointments that went up on it. People did a lot of work preparing for this, but clearly they didn't do enough.
And by the way, I really had to compliment him for
furious.
Showing up and the honesty. Yeah. And then, obviously, local Moderna, Pfizer, CIC, that ran a lot of the sites. They really did remarkable work. And Baker, for the most part, did some pretty remarkable work, too.
And then we had the 2 mothers that were out on maternity leave that came up with the fix for the vaccine website.
About how to get appointments.
That made it easier for you to get an appointment. Then there was the big debate. Do you laminate your vaccination card? Do you not laminate it? And then if you did laminate it, as I did, then when you had to get your 3rd and 4th and 5th vaccine, they had to put it on your little card with little stickers at CVS. I, of course, was convinced because I never had a reaction to any of the shots. I was lucky. I had Moderna.
You thought they weren't working.
I thought, is the nurse at Gillette, is she giving me a fake shot and then selling the real one out in the parking lot? That was very suspicious,
there's so much that Trump did horribly that that so many people are willing to forgive. The thing that is never talked about is what I mentioned a minute ago. I think it is very hard to deny that of the 1.1 million people who died in this country, hundreds of thousands of them died because of the atrocious and careless way that Donald Trump dealt with this, and you never hear a word,
Well, I always thought, and this is not an original thought, many people have said this, but being able to get those vaccines done so fast was a great triumph of Donald Trump's presidency. It was the triumph of his presidency, something that he could have talked about over and over again. I mean, at the beginning, I remember when we were talking about vaccines, people were saying 3 years, people were saying 5 years, some people were saying even longer than that, and we had them, by the beginning of, was it 2021, I think? I may be getting my years wrong.
I remember the dates.
But we had them. Then there were all the people that I remember.
But then he wouldn't even say if he was vaccinated. Do you remember that?
He would not say
if he
was
had an
vaccinated.
Opportunity not only to inspire people to get vaccinated, particularly the doubters, his supporters, but also to celebrate, again, the one terrific thing he did, but he couldn't bring himself to do it.
Our number is 877-301-8970. You can call us or text us that number to tell us where you were when you realized that we were in big trouble. At which point, by the way, we thought we were only in big trouble for a couple of weeks,
That's true.
And what are the things you remember about COVID? Obviously, on the sad side, people did get very sick. People did lose their lives. I'm certainly not underestimating the terrible toll it's taken. confusion, but it was just kind of a surreal moment for us all. We went hibernating in our house, and we thought it was only going to be for a short amount of time. The schools shutting down, that whole thing to get the Chromebooks out so the kids could do their work at home. All the stories in Boston about how there wasn't enough internet connections. People would be driving in their cars or going down to McDonald's to sit there with their Chromebooks for the kids to get their homework done. I remember there was one moment at the beginning in New York City. Remember how badly New York City was hit? They were hit before us, right? They had that great piece on PBS about Italy, because Italy was hit really badly at the beginning, and there was unbelievable confusion about how to treat COVID, what it was all about. Then you saw New York City. Two of my kids live in New York, and I think they are really still kind of traumatized from COVID because of the ambulances, the constant ambulances, and seeing those morgues. I remember there was one point where my son needed to do his laundry. And at the time he lived in Harlem, and he didn't want to go to the laundromat because you're nervous about being in the laundromat. So he's thinking, so he thinks he's going to go down to his sister's because she's going to wash her dryer, and she lives in Brooklyn, which is about 45 minutes away.
How do you get there?
How do I get there? Do I take the T? Or what do they call it in New York? I guess it's just a subway in New York. He ended up taking an Uber, and he was nervous, and the Uber driver is nervous. He got 3 loads of laundry, and he ended up staying down there like for weeks because he didn't want to come back and sit alone. That was the other thing, when you had to stay in your apartment, and if you were in your 20s, when you were in some small apartment, you had you and 2 roommates all sitting together in the kitchen.
Well, I would say that was 1/100th the horror of someone being 80 instead of 20.
Oh my God.
And living alone, or being in a nursing home
Or-
where a husband or wife or a grown child, had to be outside the window attempting to talk to the loved one.
Art Kaplan lost his mother in
I
a
do,
nursing home
in
in
Framingham,
Massachusetts.
early on.
And they would be holding up their hands to the glass in the pain in the nursing homes.
I thought you were
That
going to
was
mention, when you mentioned New York, also one of the remarkable television moments was the juxtaposition of the irresponsibility of Trump and the alleged responsibility. You may not remember him, the governor of New York State.
Oh my God.
Andrew Cuomo.
We all thought he was going to
happened
be
to
the
him?
next president of the United
Exactly.
States. Andrew Cuomo, we look forward to his press conferences every day because they were so calm and reassuring, and he seemed to know everything. The thing I was going to mention, and I forget to mention, was a moment where, and the shift change at the hospital, and people would line up on the side of the streets to applaud the nurses and the physicians as they came out in the shift change. They'd be, banging together pots and pans and stuff like that. Sadly, I think for teachers and for nurses and for people in medical care, the pandemic has had a huge toll, an exhaustion toll, in a sense that...
We just talked the other day, 1 in 4 doctors in this country say they're going to leave the profession within 2 years. What are there, 20,000 vacancies in the healthcare system in Massachusetts? Donna, who's watching online, I don't know if she tweeted or whatever, said, I was never so happy to be a shopaholic, had enough supplies and food for months, including toilet paper.
Toilet
Remember
paper.
that
The
beginning?
run on toilet paper. That was unbelievable. Kevin from South Boston says, I knew COVID was going to be a huge deal when the South Boston St. Patrick's Day parade was called off in March of 2020. That is a great one, Kevin. I mean, because we didn't know at that time that outside was better than inside. I mean, it's so much confusion. Remember, we would come in every day to work, and we'd be, and John the Claw Parker would be helping us. We'd clean off the counters to the desk. We'd clean up the microphones.
Because we didn't know how it was transmitted.
No, and we were thinking, are we far enough away from each other so we won't infect each other? The ignorance, or not, I shouldn't say ignorance, but we didn't know much about anything. Sarah,
before we get to the calls, one last thing. I want to give Biden credit. After having described, and this was intentional, Donald Trump's behavior is homicidal. When Biden in that inaugural week did the tribute to the people who, 1 million people died in this country, more than 20,000 in Massachusetts alone. And the fact that he did just that little thing that he did that recognized the pain that so many families suffered as a result of this nightmare, I thought was a really loving, important, and long overdue thing. And good for him for having done it. 877-301-8970. 3 years since the emergency declarations of COVID. Where were you then, literally and figuratively, and where are you now? Where do you want to go, Marjorie?
let's go to Sarah in New Hampshire. Thank you for calling, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
So 3 years ago, my daughter was 4 at the time in preschool. In early February, my best friend and I were always talking about how scared we were of what was going on with this random virus. And we were just baffled that no one else was nervous about it. And I actually went to the grocery store and stocked up on food for my family because I just had a feeling a lockdown was inevitable.
Wow.
And so it was this week that I went to my daughter's teacher and said, I think I'm going to keep her home. I just don't think it's best for her to be at school right now. Can you tell me what her schedule is like so I can try and replicate it at home? And her teacher said, the best thing for her is to be at school. That's the best place for a child to be. And I said, well, I'm just going to keep with that right now. And then a few days later, the lockdown happened. We honestly were good because I had gone to the grocery store and stocked up on food. But I was just so baffled and scared that the leadership of the world was so ignorant to what was happening. If me, a Joe Schmo, could see what was on the horizon. And it just was a very eye-awakening of how little is paid attention to such important aspects of our everyday life.
How did your 4-year-old deal with the isolation in the early part of this, Sarah?
She had a really hard time because she's an extrovert and she loves being with people, and being home with two parents that were also trying to balance working from home was really, really hard. I was lucky to work for a company that was really supportive of families, but it was a really hard time.
Sarah, thanks for sharing your experience with us. We appreciate it. And if I had said to you a year ago, Marjorie, that huge percentages of people would not only be not returned to the office after 3 years and probably never return to the office more than a day or so a week, you would have said it was crazy, right? But that's the permanent condition,
No,
right?
absolutely. I'm getting some texts too from people that are physicians or RNs or worked in the hospital, and talking about how horrible it was at the beginning when they were watching people lose their lives. And remember, they were debating if you should be better off putting the ventilator. Remember, they turned people over. That was the thinking, that we would put people on their stomach instead of on their backs with the ventilator, and there was so much uncertainty about it. And this particular person, this Jeff from Boston, is saying many healthcare workers now feel forgotten, yet they're still reeling from the trauma they went through during the COVID thing. He said, you saw the humanity at its best and at its worst. You saw doctors and RNs to cleaning staff at the hospitals report every day and risk their lives to take care of other people.
Do you remember what you said almost every day on the air in terms of what the news was showing and what they weren't showing and what they should be showing?
Well, I often thought that if the beginning of this, we showed very sanitized pictures. We showed people on ventilators. But I remember at the time getting texts from nurses and physicians and saying that people gasped for breath. And that if you saw that and you saw what actually happened to people that lost their lives, there would be a lot less debate about whether we should get vaccines. And I was sorry we didn't do that, because I think
you're right.
when you see that, when you see these horrors of other things that happen, it really brings it home what you were facing. Anyway, Susan from Marblehead, thank you for calling.
Hello, Susan.
Hi, guys. No, Marjorie, I wanted to tag off of that, what you were just saying. It just came to mind. I have a different story about my situation, but the way the news kept showing everyone getting the needles for the vaccination, I was like, why are they doing this? People who are afraid of needles are not going to go get vaccinated.
Yeah.
I was like, let's show, exactly what you were saying.
They could have shown the stickers, Susan, that we would all get after our little
lollipop.
Yeah, exactly.
But I was in Manhattan for 25 years, and I moved to Marblehead, and I opened a home decor shop. And 5 months in, we had to close because of COVID.
Yeah.
And sure, that was tough, but at the same time, I was counting my blessings because I had so many friends in studio apartments in New York City, and I have friends that are physicians and nurses and what they've gone through. But I remember the moment where Baker said, all non-essential, and I was like, okay, so I just put my life savings into a silly business of home decor and interior design, and had to close our doors. So we tried to change gears and started working to try and raise money for families and get our website going. And I remember people saying, I got out of New York City just in time, and I kind of felt like I did. I could sit in my backyard, and I talked about people in New York City and stuck in their studio apartments, and it broke my heart. And
Susan, were you able to redeem your business? Were you able to go back to it after COVID, or no?
Yes.
Good.
I'm sitting in my shop right now by the skin of my teeth, and Marblehead has been very supportive of Room Tonic, my shop, and roomtonic.com, plug. I've been lucky, but it breaks my heart because I'd go to New York City and walk around and everything's closed. All my favorite restaurants are closed. All my favorite shops, the mom and pops are closed, and it's devastating. It's heartbreaking. So,
Susan, that was a great call. Thank you. Good luck with your business. Speaking of restaurants, I don't know if you heard the statistic yesterday from I think it was the Mass Restaurant Association. Only 6% of restaurants in Massachusetts today are collecting more revenue than they were 3 years ago. Only 6% have an increase, and a vast majority are levels lower than when the pandemic started 3 years ago. So it's not over for restaurants, needless to say. And by the way, if you read, I check the New York Times thing every day. I don't know why I do, but I do. The lowest death numbers nationally every day were in the mid 300s. And last week they were in the mid 500s. 500 deaths still a day. That's close to 170,000 deaths a year still. Now, obviously, most of them are vulnerable people, older people.
And a lot of
sort
people
thing.
haven't gotten the full range of vaccines.
Well,
I think it's only 30% have gotten the bivalent vaccine.
In terms of the booster.
Yeah, and that is the beauty of it. That if you are immunocompromised or you're elderly, you have other health conditions, but if you are if you're lucky enough to be healthy and you get those vaccines, when you get COVID, it's not a big deal anymore.
What do we learn about this? I don't mean you and me. As a society, I would say virtually nothing. Is that?
Well, Biden has just cut all the pandemic funding, right? If you want to get your tests for free, you better hurry up. 'Cause I think they're all done in May, something like that. You know what a lot of people are testing about? Remember the Clorox wipes? That was huge. That was huge. I mean, you could charge somebody $25 for Clorox wipes in the parking lot, maybe $100 in the parking lot. We were desperate for Clorox wipes, toilet paper. Remember for a while you couldn't get sponges?
I do.
And you know what else? It's not.
How'd you feel when you found a pack of 12 rolls of toilet paper when you ran down the aisle and there was literally one case or one package?
Did you ever steal
left?
a roll from the men's room at GBH, Jim?
Maybe. Maybe.
It's very tempting, I'll tell you that. When you couldn't find any toilet paper and you go to the men's room, ladies' room, and you see 20 rolls.
We called that borrowing at the time.
Anybody notice if I just sneak one? Anyway, we're looking back at COVID at the 3-year mark. Yes, it was 3 years ago today when things started shutting down. You're listening to 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming at facebook.com, GBH News. You are listening to 89.7 GBH.
Next time on The World, a bright spot in the Ukraine war. Ships carrying wheat across the Black Sea have helped supply food to the world. That's because Russia and Ukraine struck a deal to provide safe passage for Ukrainian grain. That deal is set to expire in just over a week. We hear how diplomats are scrambling to ensure that Kyiv can continue to ship grain to global markets. It's on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Bernadine Sung Magasin with Compass Real Estate, helping you navigate the evolving Massachusetts real estate market. You can meet the team, see listings, and more at homesbybernadine.com. And Mission Safe. You can meet their staff and youth as they present on their communities and views at their gala event at the UMass Boston Campus Center Ballroom April 13th from 5 to 7 in the evening. More at missionsafe.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Brady and Marge Regan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, as we are every Friday. We're streaming at facebook.com/GBH News. If you just joined us, we're talking about the 3-year anniversary of the declaration of emergencies in Massachusetts and around the country because of COVID. 3 full years into this, how has your life changed? Are you still avoiding buffets, visiting your grandmother, going into the office? The number is 877-301-8970. Somebody texted and said, they just visited their kid in Vancouver, British Columbia. First flight they have taken since COVID. Here's another person. I'm glad you're talking about this. My name is Mark. My family owns Glove Cleaners. We're a full-service PPE and safety supply company based in Plainville. We held a drive-through event for Plainville and Rentham where we gave away over 1,200 bottles of disinfectant to the public because no one could get any.
That's right.
We suited
That's
up in
right.
Tyvek suits and face shields and placed them in people's trunks. no contact, so surreal.
Nick from Boston, thank you for calling.
Hey, Nick.
Hey, how you guys doing?
We're good.
Well, thanks.
Great. Well, I've got a story for you guys. It was very dramatic because it was at the very beginning. I'm a working musician here in Boston, and my last paying gig was March 3rd at the Marriott Long Wharf, the day of the event that spread I felt like I was patient zero, you know?
What, you were a Biogen?
So I was at the Biogen convention at the Marriott Long Wharf, March 3rd.
That was the first super spreader event, and was it not?
Yeah, and what makes it even more dramatic is I'm a walking hypochondriac. I was like, I'm like terrified to even do the gig because it was already like other people were saying. I was already well aware of this thing, and it was so ironic for me if you knew who I was. The way I couldn't believe it, but. The thing that struck me at that party, these are all people from the Biogen convention who are scientists, and they're all in the bar joking about a beer that we don't hear about much, but called a Corona beer. They're like, hey, you want to have a Corona?
I remember. I totally remember that.
And the Biogen convention was deemed the super spreader in Boston, wasn't that the deal?
Exactly.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, we went from one case in, I think at UMass to like 4 days later, 60 people were taken to Beth Israel, and I remember flipping out, trying to call the city, the state, talking about Marriott. The headlines focused sort of more on the Biogen convention, but they didn't focus on the fact that the Marriott was probably like a gateway to all, because not only was it the Marriott Hotel itself, but the MBTA. Right, the ferry. So it's shipping thousands of people a day that are shipping it off to Chelsea and Revere. It was just, it was very traumatic.
Nick, that was a great call. That was a great call. Julie from Amesbury talks about the caravan drive-by birthday celebrations. Remember that?
Of course.
And I remember there were some kids that graduated from high school. What they do is they drive by in the car with their parents or grandparents, whatever. The kid would get out. The principal or whatever is all covered up so they wouldn't get any. 3 feet across, hand the kid the diploma, the kid would get back in the car.
We had a principal on the show who was one of the first principals that organized an in-person graduation where it was in sort of a rolling graduation, X number of people, then Y. They had to keep whatever it was, 6 feet distance.
Halloween, that was a big problem. How do you give out the candy at Halloween? Do you just sit inside, let the kids come up and grab it? What'd you do about Halloween? That was a big thing. Lots of people saved a lot of money on weddings, though. You'd have those teeny tiny COVID weddings.
Like your kid.
Yes, and you had to have the little COVID mask, a special bridal COVID mask, with like beaded little white masks everybody wore to the...
Do you stop to think about 1 million people dying in this country at all?
Yes, it's horrible.
1 million people.
And we all know some of them. And we know people that got long COVID and in some cases still haven't recovered. I mean, it was a terrible, terrible, terrible thing. And you think of the people that died early on because we still didn't know that much about the virus, right?
Jamie, can you check something for us? Alec Goldstein, who's a political advisor, created in his own time that fabulous Twitter page, Faces of COVID, where people send him photographs and a short story about someone they loved who died from COVID. And he really provided an incredibly important and wonderful and selfless service. I'm curious to know if he's still posting. Faces of COVID was
Here's
his
a good
Twitter
one.
account.
This is from a vet saying his life has changed dramatically, or if she, I don't know if it's a woman or man. When 30% of households added a pet, people realize how important pets are to their daily lives and struggle to keep up. And the vets had to struggle to keep up with this massive explosion in demand. I remember vets were in the parking lot treating the dogs in a lot of cases. And the vet says some people became more entitled, and we were sometimes treated very poorly. Others were grateful. We were able to take care of them. But he says, in the aftermath, my conversations with owners about vaccines have changed. People in general seem much more open to discussion around vaccines and are better educated.
Don't you remember, though, what happened with the pets? We discussed this with a lot of vets. When COVID started, I guess, plateauing and coming down, remember what happened? People were abandoning pets.
Well, I don't think that's happened too much,
People were going back to work, and the pets were suffering from some sort of withdrawal because they had spent the first part of their life.
I thought it was the opposite. I thought that was rare, that people were pretty good.
I don't know if that's I don't know. I don't think you're right, but maybe.
Gigi is watching online and says,
what'd she say?
I have to admit, I miss the lockdown. That was a boon to some people who did like the idea of being by themselves. And it's a boon to a lot of workers who will never, ever go back to 5 days a week, right? They're going to work at home 1 day a week, 2 days a week.
A lot of people are not going back to work at all.
And it's also been a wonderful thing for people who do have that opportunity not to work from the office. They can go, take a vacation somewhere and do their work at some wonderful locale and
well, it's changed your life, has it not?
Yes, I work at home at least.
I know.
I try to work at home at least 1 or 2 days a week,
I know.
Jim.
I mean,
Jim, of course, is ruining the curve for everybody else because he
I'm
comes
trying to do
in
that.
every single solitary day. 877-301-8970. Susan in Weymouth, thank you for calling.
Thank you so much for taking my call.
Thank you, Susan.
Long time sustainer, multiple caller in.
Thank you.
Our daughter graduated from the University of Maine in Orono in 2020. She had taken a part-time job in order to pay for a trip with 15 of her friends to the Dominican Republic and an all-exclusive, exclusive is little e. Anyways, resort. They were there for 2 days and were in the bar line and heard from other guests that the resort was going to be shutting down. We had pleaded with her before, please don't go, this is serious. She was like, I'm going, I paid for it. So they closed the resort. She was able to, they went out to the airport. They were there for, I think, about 3 days, sleeping on the floor. She found a woman through the check-in person who was a travel agent in Boston and was able to get all these kids back on different flights. They kept booking these flights. They kept getting canceled. As a parent, we were absolutely beside ourselves, trying to be calm, but explaining that when you're on an island, we can't rent you a car to bring you home. And,
you were not alone in that parental fear, by the way, Susan. We talked to a lot of people at the time that were worried about where their kids were and getting their kids back to where they needed to be. Susan, thank you for the call. By the way, Alec Goldstein still does have the Faces of COVID site up. He posted as recently as yesterday. Claire Migliori, 77, of New Philadelphia, Ohio, died on March 2nd. She loved crafting and spending time with her family. She was especially fond of her dog, Sammy. When not caring for her family, she enjoyed volunteering with the Historical Society. People are dying, as I say, at the rate of 150 to 170,000 a year in the United States of America. So it's over for a lot of people, but it is not over for all.
Okay, one last text before we wrap this up. This is from Mike in Gloucester. I joined the Moderna COVID vaccine study in the summer of 2020 based at the Brigham. I had my farewell visit a few days ago after 16 visits. It felt good to be one of the many thousands in the search for a viable vaccine. It helped me deal with the monotony and all the worry and sadness that came with COVID.
Well, it took courage, too, early on to be part of the trials, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
It did.
Absolutely. Okay, we are going to talk up next with Boston Medical Center's Dr. Catherine Gergen-Barnett. We'll ask her about 3 years into COVID and a bunch of other health concerns, including the real-world impact of corporations and big money on our health and our wellness. You are listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from
The White House's plan to cancel student debt was backed by Elizabeth Warren and Ayanna Pressley, but now the Supreme Court seems poised to toss it out. I'm Adam Riley. This week on Talking Politics, we'll look at the consequences if that happens. Plus, former Boston City Councilor Felix D'Arroyo discusses his trailblazing career and how Boston changed and didn't during his 4 decades in public life. Join me for Talking Politics tonight at 7 on GBH2 and online at gbhnews.org.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And PNC. PNC is committed to making a difference in the communities they call home. Since 2004, their employees have volunteered over 1 million hours through PNC Grow Up Great. The PNC Financial Services Group, Inc., all rights reserved. And the Museum of Science, now reopened to the public with their newest exhibit, Arctic Adventure, Exploring with Technology. You can book tickets and plan your visit today at mos.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News. We're joined now by Dr. Catherine Gergen Barnett. She's the Vice Chair of Primary Care Innovation and Transformation at Boston Medical Center and Clinical Associate Professor at BU Medical School. Good to see you, Doctor.
Wonderful being with you both.
Great to have you.
Thank you.
So we have been talking, as you heard a little bit of, with our listeners about the third anniversary of the COVID lockdown. And we also mentioned, I think maybe Jim did, that in President Biden's budget.
It's actually you.
Oh, okay, I mentioned it.
One of us did.
One of us did. That pandemic funding is cut. And I'm wondering from the medical perspective how people are thinking about where we are now in 2023 and whether we can afford to do that.
Absolutely. So I think we touched base upon this a little bit last month when I was here. We know that on May 11th is when the emergency funding kind of dries out. Again, I think that we're very blessed to live in a state like Massachusetts where a lot of those benefits will continue to be covered. We do know things like SNAP benefits and many other pieces which are critical for families, especially those who are marginalized already, will be impacted. I think the big thing is thinking about how do we make sure we do not move funding off of learning again and concretizing whatever we have learned over the last 3 years in terms of thinking about public health investment, long-term strategy. My concern, and I know part of what we're going to talk about today, is that we're just going to go on to the next health topic, the next hot button, and we're going to forget everything that came before now that the funding is dry.
Well, by the way, I think that's happened without belaboring
Absolutely.
it. As recently as a few months ago, Joe Biden, and I'm not blaming him, as I'll explain in a minute, was talking about extra tens of billions to be prepared for the next pandemic, not to mention making sure we fund whatever additional shots are necessary. Virtually none of that money's in the budget, as Marjorie said.
Correct.
And in defense of Biden, it's not in there because he knows he has no chance of getting through the Republican House of Representatives, which is, this is when I asked Marty before, what did we learn from this? The answer is our leaders, at least enough to stymie any progress, learn nothing, which is really frightening for not only real people, but people who do what you do for a living. It's got to be horrible.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, it's sort of the fatigue of trying to fight a Republican agenda around this is set in. And I think the fatigue around people and sort of all of us sitting down and saying, okay, how do we have the real hard conversations about what happened? That being said, I will say that people are more expert about their own health and the way that things spread than they've ever been. I've never been contacted by news outlets to talk about, whatever gastrointestinal virus is going around, which has always been here every year. And I'm saying, well, what's news about that? But everything is news. So, I don't want to kind of make everything a hot button issue, but I do hope that people kind of keep that piece involved. But to your point, Jim, I do think that there is a real issue that will need to come out and will need to be a major focus of Governor Healy as we march forward and think about what do we think about when we think about health? Is it just medicine? Is it just healthcare? Or is it actually working with the new climate chief and thinking about how climate and health are interrelated and how do we work together?
Well, not only Governor Healy was with us about a week or so ago. I mean, she spoke to a lot of those things and seems to be where you would like her to be. We'd all like her to be, not to mention one specific, this replacing roughly 40% of the SNAP benefits that will be lost for at least a few months. I think she used the expression an off-ramp. I mean, not saying it was a great thing, but at least cushioning the blow for low and moderate income people who become totally dependent upon nutritional food and funding from the government. We're talking to Dr. Catherine Gergen Barnett.
I know we want to get to talking about corporations and health, but there may not be a link here, but I do want to ask you about this so-called medical tourism that we've all learned about this week when these 4 people went to Mexico. The mother was hoping to get some cosmetic surgery, and she survived. Another man was shot. 2 others were killed. But there's been a lot of reporting about all these Americans going on a regular basis to Mexico to get cheaper health care. That one example is a tooth implant with an acrylic crown that would cost $3,400 in the United States. Goes for $1,650 in Mexico. Apparently, people are even going there for coronary bypass operations. I'd be scared to death. But they're 3 times the price in the United States. So it's kind of a sad state of affairs, I guess, that people feel they have to go to another country to get an implant.
Yeah, I mean, I think the story highlighted what has been there for a long time. I think, again, the story highlighted somebody who went there for a tummy tuck, right? So maybe people were less sympathetic. But when you actually do the deep dive research in terms of what you just said, people are going there for dental care. Right? And so this is a fundamental flaw in our healthcare system, that people do not have dental care coverage in the same way that they have healthcare coverage. The fact that our teeth are considered separate from our body is unbelievable, and actually a very, very difficult thing as a primary care doctor trying to take care of the whole body.
By the way, I think people remember that Bernie Sanders fought like hell to have it included in one of the major bills, both vision and dental, neither of which are included in Medicare. Correct. And unfortunately, he was unsuccessful.
That's right. So hopefully that will continue to be on some people's agenda. And so the fact is this medical tourism thing has been happening. But again, it's thinking about how do we make a lot of money in terms of, where people, and in the example of cosmetic surgery, right? And the corporation push of having people go to the extreme, in this case of bariatric or tummy tucks or things like that.
And what is a tummy tuck?
Okay, well, tummy tuck is just taking extra tissue and literally excising it and kind of sewing up that area.
But it's an operation where
it's surgical. It's surgical. And I actually, in my own office, I have had patients come back with botched surgeries from being abroad, and they had not shared with me that they would do it because, part of it is how do we continue to make sure that we're having that kind of transparent conversation, that things are really hard to get covered here, and how are we going to get better health insurance, and how are we going to keep corporations responsible for all of the foods that they're pushing out and the ways that we have food deserts. So people who are traditionally marginalized will have poorer health outcomes and will have higher rates of obesity. And so, we're blaming people for going to other countries. And honestly, in a lot of cases, we can't blame them because we're not offering those things here at a reasonable price.
So, Doctor, we're going to talk about Weight Watchers, which used to say, it's all about nutrition and diet. I know they don't use the word diet anymore. Nutrition, all of a sudden it's about medicine too. We'll talk about how they got in the medicine business. Before we get to that though, when someone comes to you and says, I've been overweight my whole life. I want that bariatric, is that how you pronounce it?
Bariatric
surgery. I can't afford it here. The deductible and the copay is too much. I want to go across the border to Mexico where I can get it at half the price. What do you say to them?
Well, actually, again, bariatric surgery is covered. So it's a cosmetic.
Pick something else.
So say somebody
wants
a
not just
tummy
cosmetic.
tuck.
How about dental?
Yeah, dental.
Not cosmetic.
If somebody says, I have a crown, in this case, right? You brought it up. I have a crown that needs to be replaced. We do, again, in Massachusetts, have places that people can go for much lower cost. That being said, again, you can say, I don't blame you. Let's talk about how to reduce your risk, right? So how do we make sure that when you go, you have my number, you know these things to look out for, you have a follow-up appointment with me. So you're actually working in partnership with people. The big thing about blaming people and shaming people, it never works and it doesn't help.
Well, you mentioned before the whole thing about corporations pushing really bad food. Because I was talking with Jim about this. When you looked at the obesity numbers, I think we're like 2/3 of us now are either overweight
70%.
Okay, 70%. And that has something to do, I know that it's a chronic condition and there's a biological component, but it has to have something to do with the crummy food.
100%.
Yeah, so, and that's what you're talking about, the link. Well, tell us.
So, I think, again, there's been so much that's come out around the AAP recommendations for children around obesity and the fact that now 12 years and up, we can give kids a medication for obesity, and 13 years and up, we can recommend bariatric surgery. But very few people are saying, what are we doing about dairy industry? What are we doing about sugar industry? What are we actually keeping people accountable for in terms of what they put into neighborhood stores? How do we keep people accountable for the fact that a lot of communities, again, particularly marginalized communities, don't have grocery stores where they can get good, healthy foods at a cheap price? And that is a whole part of the conversation that is desperately lacking.
Yeah. Because when baby boomers like Jim and I, it was unusual. I remember being in school. It was unusual. There were 1 or 2 kids in the class, and I grew up in Fall River. It's not a wealthy town, that were overweight. Now you look in places like Brookline and Wellesley, and 2/3 of the class is overweight. It hasn't taken long for this to switch dramatically.
It's a massive switch, and I can tell you as a parent of 3 children, it is so hard as a parent, right? Because again, it's considered a celebration. A celebration means cake and cookies and really different kind of, way of thinking about how do we celebrate, when in fact we don't think about the long-term consequences, not to, mention
What
the
do you
mental
celebrate
health
with
impacts.
crudité in your house? What do you celebrate with?
Some broccoli stalks. She's famous.
That would be my fantasy. But I do also have to walk the line of being a normal mother too. I think the way, how do we continue to talk about the way that we raise our children together? How do we build communities? How do you make, sidewalks? All the things that we talk about in public health. But the fact is that's not part of the conversation.
Well, can we get back to the Weight Watchers thing and
please,
the Ozempic
the
or whatever it's called, where you see an ad every 30 seconds on CNN? On one hand, I say, since we do have, and I was a heavy kid off and on through my whole...
But it was unusual, wasn't it, in your
was
class?
fairly unusual.
Yeah.
Marjorie jokes that my mother had to roll me to school.
No,
Talk
you
about
joke.
not supportive.
Now you got those fancy...
It's true, by the way,
you
she
got those
did.
fancy sneakers. You can go anywhere.
So in any case, on one hand, I say, considering we have a crisis in this country of overweight, it's great that there are drugs that apparently work. You'll tell us if they do. On the other hand, I say to myself, and I'm imagining my own self as a heavy kid, is I'm saying, well, now I really don't have to worry about being a heavy kid because I don't have to go through the hard work of eating better or worrying about nutrition or diet. When the time is right, I just take a drug. So the answer to me is it's both good news and bad news. Where do you end up on this?
100% exactly where you are. I think in terms of thinking about absolutely we need to address obesity in children. Absolutely we need to address obesity in our communities, 70%. To say that there is this easy solution, this easy fix is very American. Right? And again, it's like, it's exactly what's happening post-pandemic. It's like, okay, let's just move on, right? And the fact is it's $1,300 a month, mostly out of pocket. So let's think about
$1,300 a month.
So Ozempic is sometimes covered if it's for diabetes.
Okay.
So remember, there's the same medication, but it's marketed differently. So
I can't pronounce the other one. Wegovy?
Wegovy. Perfect.
Okay, yeah.
So Wegovy is for the weight loss. Ozempic is for diabetes.
I see.
Ozempic is often covered because it's for diabetes. Wegovy is not covered, despite the fact they're talking about obesity being a chronic disease, right? So inherently there is a contradiction that's happening with that, right? So you're saying it's a chronic disease, we've got a medication, but you have to pay for it.
So is it unethical for you as a doctor to prescribe Ozempic, the diabetic drug, even though you're not treating diabetes? You're treating overweight because you know that's covered and Wegovy is not?
So some people are starting to do that. You have to kind of justify medications in all cases. And the fact is you have to stay on this medication or else you go back exactly where you were.
What do you mean, forever?
Forever.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes. So there's evidence that being off for just 1 or 2 months, you're going to go back to the exact place you were, and actually maybe even worse because you're going to realize what it felt like to be lighter, right?
So that means unless you integrate behavioral change with taking the drug, you're going to be spending potentially $1,300 a month for the rest of your
There
life.
has to be a comprehensive approach for all disease management. And I worry that we're just focused on the medication and we're going to lose sight on all the other things we need to do, including the way that we do food industry.
When you said the word Ozempic, I've been reading it. I hadn't been hearing it in my head. As soon as you said that.
The ads, right?
The ad. I'm not going to say it for you, but
call your doctor.
I know that
That's
is
what
like
they say.
a real Oh, Ozempic.
Yeah.
You hear this constantly on the
Little
radio
jingle.
and television.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. So they're obviously spending tons and tons of money about
Absolutely.
this.
And now there's a shortage.
There's a shortage.
Right? So it's continuing, and this is kind of goes into another thing of Adderall, right? So it's like
Now,
we
what's
push
going on with
things,
Adderall?
push things. So the similar things, there's a shortage on Adderall. So we push, or pharmacy pushes, and this solution, this quick solution.
This is for
ADHD.
attention deficit.
For ADHD. And ADHD is absolutely something that, should be treated, should be evaluated. And again, not at all judging any part of it, but it's recognizing that we continue to put people on medications and then they're, it's sort of at the mercy, again, of these pharmaceutical companies, then running low on these medicines and people then being left high and dry. And this is specifically happening, again, with Wegovy and Ozempic.
Well, with Adderall, I went to John Maloney's comedy show. Mulaney, excuse me, a couple of weeks ago, and he was apparently on one of the many medications he had when he arrived at rehab. It was very, do you have any drugs? No, I don't.
Yeah,
they
just
open his
Adderall.
pocket.
Right.
He's got cocaine. He's got heroin. He's got like a pharmacy in his pockets. And the other drugs is Adderall. But Adderall's an upper, right?
Yeah.
And lots of people that may not have attention deficit disorder stand on it because it's an upper, and you lose weight.
You lose weight. Yeah, it's a bit of an amphetamine.
How much is it abused to a large degree
It
or
can
not?
be. I mean, that's part of why it needs to be under doctor's orders. And, as a primary care doctor, I work very closely with my colleagues and ensuring that people are taking it appropriately. We actually check something called MassPat, which is the same thing same service will check for an opioid. We actually look to see anytime a patient has filled Adderall and by whom, like who is the prescriber. So, it's regulated, and most people are not abusing it, but we do actually have to watch carefully.
Because it does work if you do have attention deficit. Yeah,
So
that's good to
you're
know.
talking about the corporate world, and especially big pharma and the world of medicine. What's your reaction to Walgreens saying they're not going to be doing one of the two medical abortion drugs in 21 states? Most incredibly to me, including 3 where abortion is legal.
Yes.
18 and all those states are states in which Republican attorneys general have either sued or threatened to sue.
Yeah.
And by the way, Gavin Newsom, to his credit, has stood up and said the $65 million we invest in Walgreens every year in California, gone. What's your reaction to this?
Yeah, no, I think that kind of leadership is needed. And I was, obviously heartened when I heard Governor Healy on your show talking about, continued support for women. Again, as somebody who does full spectrum care and takes care of women's health issues all of the time, I think we are at a real point where people's rights are dangerously close to being redacted. We know that this medication that's being taken out of pharmacies was approved by the FDA to be given out by pharmacies. And so now, I think many of your listeners are aware that we have this federal judge that we're waiting to hear from any moment who may redact the opportunity of pharmacies to be giving a medicine that was already approved by the FDA. So again, where are we? Are we at a place where politics can trump science again?
Yeah.
And what are all the downstream consequences for women and families and communities if we're not going to have the access to these kind of medications?
Well, we talked about this woman in Texas that are suing the state about their ban on abortion, but they're not even asking to get rid of the ban. They're asking that physicians get to make the decision about whether they are in dire straits. One of them was septic, which can kill you, right?
Yes.
And she couldn't get and the fetus and its problems in utero was causing her sepsis.
Yeah. I mean, these medications are not just used for abortion, right? And they're medical emergency drugs. And we are withdrawing a massive line of life support for women.
One quick thing before you go, we don't have much time left, but what is going on with mammograms and dense breast results?
Yes, I saw that article was forwarded to me, and I was like, I wonder if there's a Marjorie...
I've been told
Marjorie question.
I'm not sure what it means.
Okay,
they do tell you though.
So there again, there's women, there's all kinds of recommendations that come up around mammograms. And even in healthcare, we're kind of straggling between different recommendations. So the USTSPF, which is a massive organizing force, says get your mammograms 50 and up. And then there's all these other groups called, including ACOG and Cancer Society, say start your mammograms at 40 and get them every year, right? So most people are starting at 40, and now the recommendations are coming out saying places that do mammograms have to be regulated, and they need to tell the women how dense their breasts are. Okay, so it's a grade system, right?
Okay, we
A
only have
through
20
D.
seconds, and when you find out your breasts are dense, what do you do about it?
All right, so if your breasts are hyperdense, you need to be making sure you work to get an MRI or further imaging, and then make sure it's covered.
Good to see you, Catherine.
Thank you so much.
So wonderful.
Dr.
We covered so many things.
Yes, we did. Dr. Catherine Gerger-Barnett is the Vice Chair of Primary Care Innovation and Transformation at Boston Medical Center and a Clinical Associate Professor at Boston University's Medical School. Thank you very, very much for coming in, Doctor. We much appreciate it. Okay, coming up right after the noon news, we're going to be here joined by GBH's Callie Crossley. Raspberry Rally. What is that? Well, stay tuned. Callie's going to fill us in. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming at facebook.com GBH News.
With Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. That's right after an NPR news break, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you and the Village Bank. The Village Bank was created over a century ago to help people build their dreams and create a better community. Learn more at village-bank.com. Member FDIC, member DIF. Remember, nobody can say your guess is wrong when you're answering at home. Test your knowledge of just about everything with the exciting 14th season of High School Quiz Show, tomorrow evening at 6 on GBH2.
I'm Stephanie Leiden, Director of Special Projects at GBH News, and this is 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you?
Yeah. 34. Yeah. This senseless mind shall find. This senseless mind shall find a home. God blesses the child that carries his sleeping 4-year-old.
Tara, did you sing the baritone part? Actually, Sean here.
Come sing it. Sing tenor.
Sing.
Sing tenor.
Yeah. Okay, come.
Right over there.
That's okay. You're voting. You get to see. Keep going. Keep going.
Here we go. All bartenders and maybe a little more because we're far away. I should have switched. Blockbusters, the child that out. Yeah. That's the first segment. Okay. This will be the end of the Pinkham. Got it. Okay.
Starting last.
All right, I got a request. Somebody wants to hear the piano.
Marjorie.
That's good enough.
Perfect. Let's get it going. We got about 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Page 18. Page 8.
The last refrain, please.
Okay.
She's showing things.
23.
He knows.
Yep.
Where it is.
Yep.
Where it is. The last one here with the last one.
Okay, yep.
Don't worry, it sounded gorgeous on our end, so
We're done.
that's all we got for now. Yeah,
Great.
I'll point you where to go for the let's go
Thank
to the
you.
homeroom and
Okay.
then across the street.
Thank you, Aiden. Thank you, Aiden.
Thank you, Aiden.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
You're right in line, right spot. We need one baritone. Preferably. So no baritone these days.
That's right. Thank you.
Oh no, this mic is only going to be used for talking.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a little pricey. I think it's still shut things though. Well, this is my best bet. I'd say the last.
State flipped the switch on online sports wagering, and it comes just days before the tip-off of the NCAA tournament, the red-hot Bruins and Celtics sprinting to the finish line, and, of course, this Sunday's Academy Awards, which you can also bet on. Lawmakers estimate that sports betting could generate about $60 million in annual tax revenue, $70 to $80 million in licensing fees, but you got to be 21 to bet.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance, where drivers can compare direct rates using Progressive's rate comparison tool. Customers can see options and rates side by side. More at progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE.
This is GBH News.
Jim Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live as we do every Tuesday and every Friday from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming at facebook.com/GBH News.
And we were supposed to have said, Marjorie, which we
What?
failed at starting at 11 o'clock on Tuesday when we're here. The mayor is with us
That's
for
right.
Ask the Mayor. This coming Tuesday, Mayor Wu will join us. One other thing I want to say, in the 1 o'clock hour, like we do every Friday, we have live music.
Yep.
This choral group,
Great.
Choral Allegro,
Unbelievable.
was supposed to bring 5 or 6 members of the group. There were 23 of them just
Yeah.
rehearsing, and it was spectacular. So if you're anywhere near the library, I would suggest if you need a little bit of a lift, you just come on by. In any case, where are we? Oh, we're joined now by GBH's Callie Crossley. Callie's the host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, which you can catch Sunday nights right here on 89.7 at 6. She's also the host of Basic Black, which airs Fridays at 7:30. You can also hear her Callie commentaries on Mondays for GBH's Morning Edition. Welcome, Callie Crossley.
Hello, Jim.
Hello, Callie Crossley.
Callie.
So, Callie Crossley, as you know, Jim Browdy has been insisting for months now that Michelle
Yes,
Obama is going to be running for president. Well,
May I correct you to begin with? It's not months, it's years.
Years, okay,
I suggested
years.
she was going to be the nominee in 2022.
the nominee. Yes. Well, the great Renee Graham, by the way, she's going to be joining us on
Monday, yep.
because she writes a lot of terrific columns. And we're going to talk to her about this one as well, Jim, that she says as Callie has been saying, it ain't happening.
Not happening. No.
No, it is not.
No,
No, it is not.
I know that Hope Spring is eternal, but no.
Yeah.
She's first of all, she's done that a little bit from there, and so that's enough. But I also keep repeating what she said at a Simmons leadership conference a few years ago, in which she said, why is it that we are always looking, meaning we, all of us, looking for whoever may be deemed to be the it person or the charismatic person or whatever, instead of looking at people who have spent some time in the trenches, trying to provide great leadership in government roles, who have talent in that arena. She said that's where we should be looking and supporting. She said, I'm all about, obviously, because she's got a whole voting thing. I want people to vote. I want people to be excited about, what it means to protect our democracy, but I am not the best representative.
Well, okay, she is going to run, clearly, and here's why she is going to run. By the way, it's a stronger argument than I had 2 years ago.
Okay.
There is a lot of pressure on Joe Biden because of his age. I know people get angry about this. The reality is he'd be 86 at the end of his second term. With all due respect to a president who's done a lot of good things, is too old. Kamala Harris is not very popular. So the question is, if Joe Biden is convinced he shouldn't run, and Kamala Harris is a losing proposition, according to many, I'm not an expert on that, 2 years out, who's the one person could come save the day, who I would argue has been in the trenches, has satisfied all the criteria that she said at Simmons we should be looking for? The answer is there's only one person, it's Michelle Obama. And as I've said many times, I will accept both of your apologies when the time comes.
We're not worried about
President Obama,
Yeah.
January 2025.
I don't think it's happening.
No.
So a big study about the police in Louisville, and people may remember that is where Breonna Taylor was killed when she was sleeping in her boyfriend's apartment, actually, and there was a knockdown, a screwed up warrant that was the wrong person, et cetera, et cetera. The young man thought you didn't know who the heck was coming through the door. She was shot multiple times. Well, apparently there is a very bad history in Louisville.
Big bad.
Yeah, tell us.
Yeah, so they just, the Merrick Garland's Justice Department just finished its 2-year-old report, because, people have been saying what's going on. So he just finally released it and said these 3 things, which is pretty intense. The Louisville, Kentucky police force routinely discriminates against black residents, uses excessive force, and conducts illegal searches. In addition to that, there was a whole question about whether or not that no-knock, quote-unquote, no-knock warrant, which is what happened at Breonna Taylor's apartment, was legal or not. Even that one was not supposed to have happened. And
they lied. The cops lied to get the warrant from the judge.
That's exactly right. And so, as we know, they were well known for doing that kind of stuff. They were using dangerous neck restraints and police dogs, and they allowed the dogs to bite people. I mean, it's just a bad scene all around.
Can you imagine that? Letting the dogs bite people?
I can't, So this has now been documented again. As Breonna Taylor's mother said, this is what we have been saying the whole time, and why did I have to lose my daughter for this to be documented? I mean, every time I think about her just minding her business in her boyfriend's apartment, as you say, sleeping, and to be shot to death. And of course, he was just emotionally sent over the edge. And he did file a lawsuit against them and won.
Yep.
Or it was against the city. I don't know.
So the reason that this was on the down low for so long was because this tragically does happen with police departments a lot? Or was there some unusual political situation there?
No. This is, I want people to go back to Ferguson.
Yep.
Let's talk about when Michael Brown was killed, his body laid out in the street for hours before anybody did anything. And then they went back to sort of look at what was the police interaction with the community. And they were routinely pulling people over because this is how they had built into their budget, if you recall. This is what the fines. Yep. So they just routinely harassed black folks because they built into the budget the fining that they would do of folks. And so this excessive force, all of that was already built into the system. So Louisville is now under consent decree. I think Ferguson was, and there are many other police departments under
Springfield, Massachusetts is another one.
Yeah.
I think part of the explanation, Marjorie, is that I can't think of the guy. Who was the Attorney General who was the first senator to endorse Trump, and then Trump turned on him in Alabama? I can't think of his name. He's suspended.
The one that Kamala said, he told Kamala, "You make me nervous."
Well, whoever he was, we'll think of his name. His name is Jeff Sessions.
Thank
you very much,
Yes,
Jamie.
thank you.
So Trump's attorney general suspended all these consent decree things. And Merrick Garland, while we've criticized him a lot for the slow pace with which he has proceeded in terms of the crimes, the alleged crimes of the former President Donald Trump, he said on day one that he was going to reinvigorate the Civil Rights Division of the Attorney General's office. And he's done it. I mean, he went to Louisville for this thing. And good for him. And my sense is, I hope it's true, I don't know if the record supports this, is it's possible that police departments and leaders, whether they be mayors or police chiefs, who don't play by the rules, who do allow their dogs not just to bite suspects, but this article says once the suspect is subdued, allow the dog to continue to chew on the individual. Maybe they'll worry that they're next. If Garland is as relentless as he's been on these things, hopefully there'll be a trickle-down effect where there'll be, maybe I'm being naive, but I hope there is.
You are.
We had the new police commissioner in here, Michael Cox, this week, and no one was talking about dogs, thank God, in Boston. But we were talking about the fact that you have bad actors on the police department that are fired, sometimes once, sometimes twice, like the gentleman,
David Williams.
I wouldn't want to call him a gentleman, who beat the commissioner back in 1995.
It is Williams, right?
Yes.
David Williams,
they get reinstated through arbitration. So this keeps happening because the police unions here and elsewhere are extremely powerful. Now we'll see.
But you hear what he said in answer to your question? That he supported Mayor Wu's position. There's a red line in contract negotiations. Arbitration cannot be in this contract. By the way, in fairness to Williams, I don't think he actually beat Michael Cox. He was at the scene. It was one of, I believe this is, can you check that also, Jamie? But was implicated in the beating of Michael Cox in 1995.
Well, I mean, so much of the discussions we have about these scenarios are the other people who are bystanders who just either say nothing or participate. And, you know, that makes it...
Because
like Derek Chauvin.
That's a great... Or Tyree Nichols.
That's
exactly
right. So, and for police officers that are trying to do the right thing, the fact that you are penalized for doing the right thing by some of these bad actors is going to be horrible, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, there needs to be kind of reforms, it seems to me, all over the place in terms of you do the wrong thing, you got to pay for it.
Well, I don't know. Untangling all of this is going to be a long-term process. But if nothing else, I can't even use the word bittersweet because that's just too small a word. But it's horrible that Breonna Taylor's mother said, you know, we've been saying this, there's been evidence. So now you have the documentation based on my daughter's murder, you know.
Now, Kelly Cross, you know a lot about food. I would say it's an unfair situation for you to be on an airplane and you're a vegan and you're on a long flight and all you're going to get to eat on the long flight is a banana.
Isn't this the craziest thing?
Yeah, this is a great story.
This is the craziest thing. So this guy in business class, that's what stopped me.
Business class, that's right.
Business
paying extra.
Wrote about a meal service that he confirmed with his flight attendant that he had ordered a vegetarian vegan meal. They said yes, this was a breakfast thing, and they brought him a banana. And he said, oh, I thought this was going to go with something. He got a banana. He said it was a very good banana. And he was on a flight to Japan, so they put some chopsticks on the plate.
They gave him chopsticks.
So, I mean, can you
I didn't
imagine?
read that part.
Yeah, isn't that great?
I mean, that is the craziest thing. I would be so mad. And they didn't seem to feel bad about it. You know, they're just like, well.
Were they trying to get even because he said he was a vegan?
No, I think they said, you know, banana is a vegetarian.
I guess.
So they didn't, I guess their point is we didn't say how much we're going to give you, but we did give you something.
I don't know.
So the poor guy was like sitting there. They claim, actually, their explanation is that this, on the breakfast flights, on the switchover flights when you're going on these long trips, that most people want to sleep. So they figured, you know, even the breakfast for the people who are not vegetarian isn't that big. And he said he acknowledged it wasn't that big, but they had a piece of bread and something. I mean, it's the craziest thing I ever heard.
I think it's absolutely, I think
By
it's
the way,
absolutely
I want to
outrageous.
correct myself. You were right. Jamie just pulled up a little bit. During a civil rights jury trial in U.S. District Court, 2 officers, including David Williams, were found liable for violating Cox's rights by using excessive force to subdue him. So speaking of food,
yes,
I think we talked to you about the Raspberry Rally a few months ago.
Yeah,
we
well,
didn't. What is the Raspberry Rally there, Kelly?
It's the new cookie that's part of the rollout of the Girl Scout cookies. So they're going to try, every year they try a new taste, just test it out. Well, they tried this one, and it's a thin mint with raspberry filling, just for everybody's edification. But they sold it only online. Apparently, and I've never had it because it was only online.
Nor had I.
And my Girl Scout connection is in the newsroom, and her daughter couldn't get it because it's only online. So anyway, it's everybody.
That's terrible.
I know everybody loves it, but here's the problem.
What?
Because everybody loves it, these cookie scalpers have grabbed up all the
Cookie
cookies.
scalpers.
That's what I call them. They've grabbed up all the cookies and they're reselling them on eBay for ridiculous amounts of money. But that money does not go to the Girl Scouts, which is the whole point of the Girl Scout cookies. As a former Girl Scout,
Who does it go to? The sellers.
You
the
just,
person-
You're
It's
just
like the secondary
scamming.
ticket market for a concert kind of thing.
$68 for a box.
Yeah, but they've seen them higher than that.
Raspberry and mint. I don't know if they go together.
No, it's not
Do you think
raspberry
so?
and mint.
It's raspberry and chocolate. Remember?
They've gotten rid of the mint.
Right.
Okay, because I was going to say, I don't think I like that,
Right,
raspberry
right,
and mint.
right,
I want
exactly.
thin mints in general.
So as a former
love
Girl
them.
Scout,
You do? Yeah, I love
that would be you, not me.
What? Yes.
Most of those cookies are horrible.
Are you kidding? They're
The Thin
delicious.
Mints. I love the Girl Scouts, so I'm not criticizing. Buy your Girl Scout cookies. Other than a Thin Mint, what is edible? And a Raspberry Rally.
Oh, come on. The peanut butter ones?
And the ones that are like Oreos.
Yeah, and then
vanilla
Samoas.
cream.
Yeah, what's wrong
the
with you?
chocolate cream. They're good. They're very good. Yeah, absolutely.
Those
They are
lemon
very
ones,
good.
those are good too.
They are?
Yeah.
Yes, they
What
are.
you were really a Girl Scout?
I was a brownie, a Girl Scout, and all the way up. And also was named by the group of the Eastern Girl Scouts
In
I think it's
Massachusetts
in
here, yeah,
Massachusetts, a distinguished.
You were?
Yes, I'm.
So what does all the way up
big-time
mean?
Girl Scout honoree.
Okay, fine. So I understand brownie and I understand Girl Scout. What is the all the way thing? What does that mean?
It's equivalent to what would be
Eagle
on the
Scout.
Boy Scout Eagle Scouts. Yeah, you just go up.
So what'd you do for that?
You do activities. You earn badges.
Like
you know,
what
you learn-
activity did you do?
Jesus. Now
Wasn't
we're
there
gonna go back.
sexism? Wasn't there sexism in the Eagle Scout thing? Only boys could be Eagle Scouts. Wasn't that the deal?
Well, the problem was.
Are you Eagleettes?
For me, the problem is that Boy Scouts, scam their way into Girl Scouts. That's my problem.
Oh, okay.
That's my problem. And they brought all their baggage with them because we didn't have that baggage. And so the claim was, they're doing so many more adventures than the Girl Scouts could do. So we're going to bring them something. You didn't bring us anything. Stay out of
Little hostility
Remember the
here.
pins? I was not a Girl Scout, but I was a brownie. And you put all the pins on your
You were
little
a
outfit.
brownie?
I was
Yes.
a brownie, absolutely.
You're in your flags.
Yeah.
So for example, for Girl Scouts today, there are STEM classes.
I know that. I
You
do know
do
that.
service projects for people. All of that kind of stuff. It's
And they had
very
trouble
important.
getting leaders, right?
Yeah, well, for all.
People are working now.
What's the guy at Harvard? You've had him on for many times, bowling alone guy.
Bob Putnam,
yes.
Robert Putnam.
Well, he would argue with you that in general, it's not just the Girl Scouts. There's trouble in these community organizations because people aren't supporting them as they used to. And so I'm always proud of those people that step up, those parents or those community leaders. Some people were not parents, but they stepped up to do the hard work. And it is hard, wrangling all us little people who are going in various directions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I was very proud. You are friendly with his daughter, the Cambridge Bank people, the bank, Century Bank.
Yeah.
He was a big deal in the Boy Scouts.
Marshall Sloan.
Marshall Sloan.
The
I remember
late,
going
great
over
Marshall Sloan.
to his apartment in Chestnut Hill, and on the wall were all these awards he'd gotten from the Boy Scouts.
Yeah.
And he had to be well into his 80s then, and he flew to Texas to testify on behalf of gay rights in the Boy Scouts.
Oh, that's
and
great.
I thought that was wonderful because there was a big brouhaha about
Right.
that, remember? Gay Scouts being ostracized and something like that. And I thought, look at this guy, 85, was so proud of his service in the Boy Scouts.
I mean,
the Boy
when
Scouts.
done well, it's really well. Guess who was in my class of distinguished honorees? Joanne Chang.
Really?
Yes.
Joanne Chang?
Joanne Chang.
From
yes.
Myers and Chang
That
and
is
Flower?
correct. Girl Scout. Yes, that's right.
There you go.
So why
There you
didn't
go.
why didn't you graduate from the Brownies?
I don't remember. Something happened. I got in trouble for something. I don't know what happened. I never
bet.
made it. I didn't fly up. That's what you did, right? You would fly up for the brownies for the Girl Scouts, and I crash landed.
So the only reason, actually, you and Sue O'Connell and Marjorie are the only people of any interest in the Royals.
Oh, well,
that's not true.
No, I'm talking about amongst the four of us.
Because he was on the bestseller list, The Spare. He's on the bestseller for weeks. He might even be on there this Sunday.
Who else is on the bestseller list? Number one nonfiction this week? Ron DeSantis.
Yeah, but I'm suspicious
of that. Bigger than Barack Obama's.
Well, you know why? Because a lot of these conventions, these gatherings, these politicians, they buy books in bulk. Yeah. Hundreds and thousands of books. I think it's a bogus number.
Okay, so Harry and Meghan get evicted from some house.
Yeah.
That they're not living in anyway.
Frogmore.
Why is that a big deal exactly?
Well,
by their father, by his father.
Well, yeah, I guess so, because it happened really after. The Queen was still alive when they got kicked out, right?
I'm not sure.
So.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
I think it's when the book came out and he was detailing private conversations with his father and brother.
The boot.
I can't believe I know that.
But he doesn't live there because it's only his place to visit when he goes back, maybe like for the coronation. And he may go in May. Coronation.
But there was a whole lot of brouhaha because remember they had it renovated and people thought they were spending
too much
royal money to renovate it. Anyway, they kicked him out of there, but they're bringing him into the Buckingham Palace to stay. So when they come to visit, as is expected they will come for the coronation, they'll stay in Buckingham Palace.
That's right.
And they're in a suite of rooms that Prince Andrew used to stay in, but he got kicked out of Buckingham Palace.
As for Jeffrey Epstein reasons.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
A picture of him with that very young-looking woman that did not go well for him.
She was a minor.
Yeah.
She wasn't a young-looking woman.
That's right. I'm sorry. She was a minor.
Yeah.
You are correct.
Yeah.
So, wait a second. But they haven't even been invited to the coronation. Is that correct?
Well, I think they are. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. The question is, are they attending? So I would assume they have been invited. The question is whether or not they're attending.
Well,
the
Sussexes.
They were
disinvited. Yes.
You know,
who are the Sussexes?
That's what they are.
Oh,
that's their name. The
Harry
Sussexes.
and Meghan?
You know, you're going to go wild because we're going to have coronation morning, noon, and night for like 3 days. So we have all these pictures of Charles and Diana, and then the controversy about the wife, and it's going to go on.
I think that the latest news is that their kids are now formally Prince and Princess.
But why did they? I don't get that.
Because Charles had to, because they couldn't do it while the Queen was alive. But the minute that Charles becomes king, then his kids get the titles.
But if Harry and Meghan want nothing to do with the royal family,
but that doesn't have anything to do with their kids.
Well, what does that mean?
The kids just are a
They're
part
innocent,
of
Jim.
They're a part
Innocent.
of the lineage.
So Archie, is that the kid's name?
Yes.
He's a prince.
He is
and what's
a
the other
prince.
one?
And Lilibet Diana
is a princess.
Is a princess.
Princess.
That's
And they hadn't originally used those titles. In fact, they had said we're probably not going to use those titles. But now, when it became clear that Charles was going to be king, now they're using the titles.
Did you read they had 775 rooms in Buckingham Palace?
Yes.
That is one big place, I would say, correct?
Well, I mean, I've stayed at Windsor Castle. And
you have?
Yes, I've told you all this.
No, you haven't. No, you haven't. How did you get to stay at Windsor Castle?
All the brownies were staying there, and then the Girl Scouts, they all got to stay at Windsor Castle.
Not in the part where the Queen was, because it's huge, So there's a part where their groups can stay and conferences or whatever.
I didn't know that.
Yes, I was. Now you'll love the title of this because everybody who was with me in the session understands I struggle around this. It was a session about forgiveness. Let's just say that at the end of it, I didn't come out.
So was it spectacular and elegant?
Yeah, because all the food, everything is grown right there. It's all And what was really great, the best experience is when people would come to visit Windsor Castle and they would close the gates at the end of the day because it's time for visitors to go away, and we'd be inside. So I just like to be inside watching all the visitors.
You can wave to people outside.
The rumor I had heard is when you stayed at Windsor Castle in those days, when you were paying your room fee, you wrote the check directly out to Queen Elizabeth. Is that?
I didn't have
so
anything
that she
to do
could
with
cash
writing
it
the
directly?
check. It was very lovely, a lot of fun, and the food was delicious.
Yeah, I'd like to go to get invited to Windsor Castle for a weekend to discuss forgiveness.
Yes.
Or to discuss anything for that matter.
Yes.
What the heck?
Yeah, it was really interesting.
Is it hard to swing the Windsor Castle digs?
Well, it came with the discussion groups.
That is great.
Yeah. So
we're doing a remote broadcast from there during the coronation.
Okay.
When is the coronation, by the way?
The coronation is in May. I think it's May 6th or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty. I have to say, I was very happy that when Harry and Meghan got married, Meghan's mother stayed at Clifton, which was I was in college and you did the junior year abroad. That's where we lived, in Clifton on the Thames, and the bathroom was so big in this castle that you could fit probably 10 people in there. Wow. And the bedroom was so big that we had 6 women or girls, co-eds, whatever you were, 6 people in that room. It was like the high point.
They don't live small.
They do not live small.
They do not live small.
No, and all the drapery and the armored, the guys in
Do you listen
suits
to
of armor.
yourself or you're not? I mean, this is unbelievable. It
was
really
wonderful.
Is
And they had beautiful gardens, and you look out on the Thames, and then it would stay light till 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah. Well,
That's where the Profumo affair was, that big scandal.
We went over to look at the Queen's horses, all of that, the whole stables.
That good?
Yeah,
they were good?
Yeah, I mean, she's really into it.
Yeah.
So
she's a great horseback rider.
Yeah.
Who is?
The Queen Elizabeth. She's no longer with us.
So
but she was at the time.
Yeah.
Remember the movie The Queen with Helen Mirren? We got into a lot of her horseback riding, and they were out in the country cottage.
Yeah, well, that's what Windsor,
Yes.
is considered.
So can we do a weekly bit leading up to what's it called, the coronation? If we do a weekly little thing updating people.
I don't know. I
going
can't
on.
explain it. I probably shouldn't be interested, but I can't help it. I am. I've not read the book. I have not read the book.
Harry's book.
Have you? I don't know if you all know that South Park has done this sort of devastating.
Oh my God!
On
they
the spare?
eviscerated the two of them.
Yes.
The basic theme was, how dare you pay attention to us on our privacy tour?
Right.
Is that not the thing?
And they renamed his book that we know as The as Wah.
Yeah.
It was
really
funny.
He probably shouldn't have done it, but it's okay. What are you doing on the radio?
Or anywhere, for that matter.
Oh, okay.
Or Basic Black. You never tell us about Basic Black.
Tell us something.
Why don't you tell us about both?
Okay, hold on. First of all, Basic Black is in pledge, so calm down.
You and Jared.
Okay.
Both in pledge.
All right. But for Under the Radar, we're doing a pop culture segment with my folks from Wellesley College and from UMass Boston to talk about Oscars, about the studio that a lot of people don't know about, A24. That's the studio that has funded and backed Everything Everywhere All at Once.
I didn't know
and
about
Moonlight. They're very stealthy. They're just like under the radar for sure.
speak, yeah.
And so it's a really interesting thing. And they just bought the Cherry Lane Theater in New York. They're just really expanding everything. So they're very interesting. So we're talking about all of that going on there. Rihanna and her singing and whatever happens whether Oscar's so white or less white now. But I'm really excited about that part, but I'm really excited about the second part because, as you know, the Oscars will be on Sunday.
Yeah.
So I brought back my Asian film contributors who are themselves Asian. That's Elena Kreff from Wellesley College, who specializes in photography and media and women's and gender studies, and then Jenny Korn, who is the founder of the race and tech part of the Berkman Internet and Society for the Internet and Society at Harvard.
Oh, my daughter works there, Berkman Klein Center.
Yes, the Berkman Klein Center. So the two of them have come. We've been coming together talking about whether or not the impact of these images, positive images from Crazy Rich Asians, as you know, was quite some time ago, would ever lead to something bigger than that. And so we're calling this Everything Everywhere All at Once, with those nominations, the historical nature of them, and just a general recognizing of more visibility of this talented group of people. They've been there the whole time, they just couldn't get any work, and what that means. And it's a great conversation.
Fabulous. Great night for it, too. Callie, it's great to see you.
Callie
as well.
Crosby.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go Spare. We've been speaking with Callie Crosby, host of Under the Radar with Callie Crosby, which you can catch Sunday nights right here.
We should do a countdown. How many days till the coronation?
I think it's less than 2 months, Jim. Time to start getting ready. Plan your strategy.
Sue O'Connell knows how many days. I'm telling you.
Okay.
Sadly.
Under the Radar with Callie Crosby, Sunday nights, 8:30. 6 o'clock at 89.7. 6 o'clock, that's right. And Basic Black is on pledge. You don't have to worry about that.
Don't worry about that.
A new study found that the pandemic and a whole lot of parents misled, you might say lied, to other adults about just how sick their kids were, that they had COVID and they didn't tell. NYU medical ethicist Art Kaplan will join us for that story and more. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library.
What is it like to hear 30-year-old hip-hop for the first time?
It never felt like there was any posturing. It never felt like they were trying to put on a persona. It just feels authentically them.
The early music from De La Soul is finally out on streaming services after years of being tied up in legal disputes. I'm Elsa Chang. That story on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Seasons 4, the outdoor living store on Mass Ave in Lexington, featuring over 100 styles of contemporary and traditional outdoor furniture, plus a wide selection of plants, statuary, and garden accessories. Seasons4.com. And American Repertory Theater, presenting The Wife of Willisden. You can pull up a bar stool to the body new comedy by acclaimed author Zadie Smith about living a life worth telling. Now through March 17th. amrep.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marge Regan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News. Our next day at the library is Tuesday. We'll be joined for an hour by Michelle Wu for Ask the Mayor. That's next Tuesday, the 14th. We're joined now on Zoom by medical ethicist Art Kaplan. Art is the Doctors William F. and Virginia Connolly Mitty Professor and founding head of the Division of Medical Ethics at NYU School of Medicine in New York City. Hello, Art Kaplan.
Hello, hello.
Hello to you.
Great to see you and talk to you as always, Art Kaplan. We spoke earlier in the show about the medical tourism that's gone on in Mexico, which is highlighted in this tragic situation where 4 people went there to help a woman that was a driver where she wanted to get cosmetic surgery. 2 were killed, not the woman, but 2 of the men in the company who were killed. The 3rd man was shot. And apparently there's lots of Americans that go to Mexico for dental care, for cosmetic surgery, even for heart surgery. So is there an ethical issue involved here in this kind of tourism?
Yeah, there really is, Marjorie. The fact is that Mexico and actually Costa Rica, some other places to the south, Colombia used to be a destination too, are cheaper, far cheaper. And we, have talked many times about the high prices of American healthcare. So people are going there. One reason is just to get low-cost care. I have to tell you, my experience in talking to people who've done it is that the quality of care is all over the place. Can be okay, but often it isn't. I've talked to people who went there for cosmetic surgery, came back with disastrously horrible results. And by the way, when you come back, it makes it hard to care for you because people here don't know what they did to you there.
Oh, yeah.
The follow-up gets to be tricky. The other business is, there's all kinds of cuckoo things being offered. Stem cells for kids with autism, stem cells for treating depression, and on, unproven. Probably just quackery in the extreme, but desperate people show up and say, well, I couldn't get this from doctors in the U.S., but there's a clinic in Mexico that will give me this. Again, really bad reason to go there. I know people want to pursue all the options, but just being impoverished by quacks is not the way to deal with a terminal illness.
Art, when Dr. Catherine Gergen-Burnett was here, I asked her a question about what would she say to a patient who couldn't afford, forget cosmetic stuff, take that off the table, more serious healthcare that they needed, they couldn't afford in the United States, it was affordable in Mexico, would she refer them? And I really didn't ask the question the way I should have. The way I should have is the way I'll try to ask you. Does a doctor who has a patient sitting in front of them, where the patient says, I can't afford the care you tell me I need, does the doctor have an obligation to say to them, it's provided at a lower cost, and you should do your research at a lower cost in X, wherever it is, let's just pick Mexico, or is there no such obligation?
I don't think there is. I think the quality of care slips. I'm not convinced that by the time you pay all the travel and the housing and the whatever, you're not sinking some significant resources. I'd rather say, hey, let's see if we can bring this to the attention of your state legislator. Let's see if the news media might take an interest in your plight. There's crowdsourcing that might be done. There's sometimes fundraising assistance that some groups in your community may provide. I don't know about recommending Mexico. I'm leery.
You know, by the way, before we leave this, for people who know very little about medical tourism other than this horror show of last week, I think the story we read in the New York Times, the Washington Post said there are more than 1 million Americans who have sought some kind of care in the last year. 1 million people have gone to Mexico alone. There are other jurisdictions where they might go for medical tourism reasons as well. We're talking to Art Kaplan.
Hey, by the way, it occasionally is pronounced that we have the finest healthcare system in the world. You both have heard that, I think?
Yes, we have both heard that.
And it's fine if you can get into it and afford it. It's not so fine if you have to go cross-border or mortgage your house or get into medical debt.
Or can't get an appointment.
Can't get an appointment. You can see all the real signs that the system is not adequate and is not serving all of the American people, which it ought to do.
So Art Kaplan, and we are talking to Art Kaplan, obviously our medical ethicist. John.
That's why you said Art Kaplan,
That's right.
I think.
That's right. I wanted to see if you were paying
I'm
attention.
paying attention, yes.
John Fetterman, he's the new senator from Pennsylvania. He suffered a stroke during the campaign. There was a lot of controversy about his ability to speak and his ability to answer questions. Remember the debate he had with Mehmet Oz, his opponent who lost. Apparently, he is suffering from something which is not unusual after a stroke, which is severe clinical depression, and he's been in the hospital. He's going to be there for, I think he's going to be there for 3 or 4 weeks.
At least.
Dealing with his clinical depression. You talk a lot about having exams for people, physical and mental exams before they run for high office. What do you think about this situation?
Well, you know, the Fetterman situation was getting debated before he had this recent hospitalization. I'm not convinced, by the way, that the depression is due to the stroke. That's been a story told, but I don't know if we know that. Maybe he's had bouts of depression unrelated to this before. It's been hinted, by the way, that that's true. So I think people who run for high office, given the fact, by the way, that many of them seem to be falling over and banging their heads in different places.
Mitch McConnell in the hospital with a concussion,
I think Biden was slipping upstairs again and so on. Look, I think we need, and I've only said this for 20 years, an independent commission to at least evaluate people for executive office once they get nominated by their party. I think we need an independent medical examination, not by the physician of the president or the physician of the senator, but by somebody who's independent. If you ask me, where does it end? Well, I deal with president, vice president, cabinet, and Congress. That would be good. Does it mean, though, that any of these medical exams are going to disqualify people? No, you could still vote for them or say I'm okay with a person with a disability or a problem holding high office. It's just we're not getting honest information. It's all spun. It's all clouded in mystery because all of these politicians don't want us to know really what's going on. It's that simple.
By the way, and it's a bipartisan thing. I mean, I think it's clear when Trump was in the hospital with COVID, his doctor was cooking the books. I think that's demonstrated. And Fetterman, when he was running for office, we talked to you a lot about this. It's clear that they were not telling the whole story. And while I am sympathetic to the privacy rights of anybody, I'm particularly concerned about my own. If you decide to run for one of those offices you just enumerated where you think we have a right to some information, I would argue you forego most of those privacy rights, at least as relate to you, not to your family, as relate to you if you want to represent the people of your district or the United States. So I am totally where you are.
If you have the power to declare war, if you get your finger on the nuclear button, I mean, these are national security issues of major importance to us all. I'd like to know a little bit about the health status, mental and physical, of people in those top roles. Do I think we're going to get it? No, because the people who would have to approve it are the very people that were trying very hard to hide their medical information.
You know, Art Kaplan, I thought it was very interesting that one of the recommendations from his physicians during his so far 3-week stay in the hospital was to limit his exposure to cable TV, the internet, and social media. So that, I guess that says something about social media, et cetera's impact on one's mental health.
Well, it would be interesting to have some examinations, perhaps, of Tucker Carlson. Or
yeah. Okay.
We're talking Art Kaplan, medical ethicist.
Okay. So some parents apparently lied about their kids' COVID status.
What a surprise.
Are you surprised?
No. I can answer that very simply.
Okay.
No.
Yep. Yeah, and the reasons they gave, some of them you could understand because they might have been a single parent, someone who couldn't work, wasn't going to get paid if they didn't work, and so they couldn't afford to miss work themselves, and so they sent the kid back to school prematurely. But other excuses that these parents gave were pretty bad. Like, this was this big study that was done by researchers from the United States and British universities, and some of the excuses were, well, I want to exercise my personal freedom as a parent. That's not a particularly good reason, I don't think. Or they wanted their kid to resume a normal life. I get that because we know that kids talking about depression suffered from anxiety and depression the times they were out of school. But
one of the other reasons is because they wanted to return to a normal life. They wanted to go to work, for example.
Yeah.
And so the kids should be in school.
I got a little secret solution to this.
What?
About a little better family benefits, little daycare,
Yeah.
little ability to put your kids somewhere. I mean, the people can't go back to work because they got 3 kids at home. And they're trying to use school as daycare partly. And I understand they need to make a living. They don't want to be able to feed their family. We stink at providing options to single working parents and so on to help take care of their kids. I'm not surprised they're lying. I'm a little sad that they're lying and putting other kids at risk when they send them to school sick. That's really not the way to treat a neighbor. But I know what's going on. We have no safety net like other countries do. I was looking at a chart the other day, said that, England, France, many other countries have like a month of paid leave you can access, parental leave. Somebody just created like menstrual leave if you're in a lot of pain and suffering. I mean, we have nothing. So, you get what you pay for. We don't pay for anything.
By the way, Michael Moore, was it Sicko? Was that the name of the movie that did this? Michael Moore did a spectacular job years ago, maybe 7, 8, 9 years ago, with a film talking about how other, particularly Western governments, care for people, particularly when you have a kid, for example. Do you remember when they were in that little boat with Michael Moore?
Going to
trying
Cuba?
to get to Guantanamo.
Yeah.
So he could get into Guantanamo so he could get medical care that he couldn't afford. We're talking to Art Kaplan.
I have to say, Jim, by the way, every once in a while, when you're talking about giving advice to someone who can't afford care, every once in a while, somebody commits a crime so they can get into a prison so they can get care. I've seen it.
I've read about it, too. Speaking of read about it, Art, I know you'll have limited time today. The headline in the Globe the other day, a story by Jessica Bartlett, was a bacterial infection killed 3 patients at Brigham and Women's. Here's how it got in. And you can talk about this as a water issue. I have to say, and I didn't have time to do the research this morning. I was mentioning this to Marjorie and Jamie. I don't recall having heard about this. Is 2018, by the way.
Right.
4 to 5 years ago. Was this public knowledge? Not the cause. I know the finding of the cause is brand new. Did we know about these bacterial infection deaths?
I certainly didn't. I've heard about Legionnaire's disease.
Yeah.
Remember that was getting in the water supply and filtration systems of a lot of older hospitals, and by the way, other buildings too. I didn't know, and I'm not sure how you'd find out. It's not like everybody runs around saying, yeah, we got a bacterial infection inside the hospital. When those break out, the way we usually find out is when somebody dies from it.
So what ethical obligation, Mr. Ethics, medical ethics, is a hospital under to inform the public as to certain happenings that may affect that potential patient's decision-making about seeking care?
Well, at a minimum, every year we ought to see statistics on infection rates, on what kinds of safety issues have come up within each hospital. We get all these hospitals claiming they're number one and the best quality and the finest care. that I don't see worked into those reports, and we had the fewest infections, in the area.
Yeah, I think that what they concluded, there wasn't enough chlorine. Wasn't that one of the
I believe
things?
that was what happened.
Which is
the water filtration system or something.
Yeah, and they went through this. It was almost like a detective novel. It was a laborious process to find out exactly what happened to this water.
Yeah, anytime they want to solve that, they can hitch up to my water supply in Connecticut. It is so much chlorine in it, we can't drink it. But.
Art, before you go, if we could spend the last 2 minutes with you, how we started the show. We mentioned that sadly you lost your mother at the beginning of COVID in Framingham. And we mentioned to Dr. Catherine Gerger-Barnett that it's the 3-year anniversary, obviously, this week, of the emergency declarations. The budget from the President of the United States, because he knows he can't get it through the Republican House, cut out, I think, tens of billions of dollars he originally planned to include to make sure that we deal with the tail end of this pandemic well, and that we're well prepared for the next pandemic. All of that money gone because there aren't votes in the House. Forget professional, what's your personal reaction to that?
Well, it's almost 3 years to the day that my mom died of COVID. And just to remind everybody who's watching and listening, she died without anybody being able to go in her room. Everyone was terrified of catching infection. My sister was trying to talk to her through the window in her room. This was in a nursing home in Framingham. And we have not done what we need to do to protect the vulnerable, the people who are most at risk of these diseases, COVID, flu. We still don't have mandatory masking in all these places. We still have crummy ventilation. We never upgraded. We still have too many people crowding together. We're not ready for the next pandemic, and we haven't done justice to, remember, 1 million people died. It's as if, well, that didn't matter. Why? Because a lot of them were elderly, and we wrote them off. And a lot of Republicans, I have to remind people, did say, oh, they're elderly and they're going to die anyway.
Well, the other thing is, it's not just 1 million. As I mentioned this morning, I don't know why I do this, but every morning the first thing I look at online are the COVID numbers in the New York Times. And somewhere between the middle 300s and middle 500s of people are dying every single day, which is 150,000, 175,000 people a year at the, quote, end of the pandemic. Speaking of the fact that we obviously do need to continue to invest.
First, it's an undercount because we don't have that many good surveillance things going on. And second, if it was airlines and they were crashing one a day, which is kind of what that number is, I think you'd see some action.
Art, good to see you. We know you got to go early today. Take care of yourself. We'll talk to you next week, Art Kaplan.
Thank you very much, Art Kaplan. We've been speaking with our medical ethicist, Art Kaplan. He's the doctors William F. and Virginia Conley, Mitty Professor and founding head of the Division of Medical Ethics at NYU School of Medicine in New York City. Okay, coming up. Would the world be a better place if you could go to a Bruce Springsteen concert at noon and be home in bed by 7:30?
Governor Healy has laid out her priorities.
The cost of housing is out of control for too many because we simply don't have enough of it.
But what are yours?
Education.
I'm very concerned about climate.
The economy.
General access to health care.
GBH News, New England Public Media, and CAI Cape and Islands are collaborating to raise your voice. Have your say on Healy's agenda at gbhnews.org/yoursay.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Boston Ballet, presenting Don Quixote, returning for the first time in more than 10 years, featuring choreography by Rudolf Nureyev and a score by Ludwig Minkus. Opens March 16th. Tickets at bostonballet.org. And Feast and Fettle, a meal delivery service committed to providing fresh, home-cooked meals to Greater Boston. All orders are locally prepared and hand-delivered. Plan options at feastandfettle.com/radio.
Trusted, local news. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Mark Regan, live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News. We're here every Tuesday and Friday. And next Tuesday, the mayor joins us. Mayor Wu joins us. I don't know what time, but she'll be here to take questions and calls on Tuesday the 14th. Right now, here to take on the social norms and abnormalities of the day is Media Maven Sue O'Connell. The Media Maven is the co-publisher of Bay Windows and the South End News, and the Media Maven is a contributor to Current on NBCLX and NECN. Media Maven Sue O'Connell, it is good to see you. How are you?
Good day.
Good day to
Hello,
you.
everyone.
Good day to you.
Media Maven, it's always good to see you.
It's good to see you as well.
Yeah.
So the headlines are all over cable TV. Prosecutors in New York say that the criminal charges against Trump are likely very soon. You know, I'm so sick of hearing these headlines.
I know.
I mean, they've been going on forever. And this is for the Stormy Daniels case that he paid. Michael Cohen gave her money because she is a adult film star. This is the least interesting of all the cases, if you ask me.
And I didn't pay her because she's an adult film star.
Yeah, I just want to stop you, though.
Well,
that,
to have sex.
No, to say
and to not
that the President of the United States was accused of having an affair with an adult film star, and that's the least interesting of all the charges that are against him.
That's a very good point.
Because I think, are you surprised?
No,
I mean, tax
we
evasion.
should be clear. This is paying her to shut up.
Just shut up.
Using potentially an illegal campaign contribution.
Right, with the money that he washed through
Michael Cohen.
Michael Cohen's law firm.
That's correct.
So there's also, lawyers aren't supposed to do that. They're not supposed to, clean money for you in a way. I mean, I'm with you on this, Marjorie. It's like you see these headlines like, oh, it's going to be a criminal charge, and then you read deeper, and they're like, well, the charge doesn't mean they're necessarily going to be able to prove it. And then if they prove it, to your point, though, it is sort of the least important, if you will, of the charges that would be against him. And then you think, well, is this going to be like an Al Capone situation where he finally gets charged, Trump gets charged for something, and it's basically for, hiding a payment, which is wrong and is illegal and should be punished. But when all is said and done, is that what the charge is going to be?
Well, you know what the other problem, I am totally with you. I mean, a guy who, in my estimation, after having followed this pretty closely, should be charged by Jack Smith. He can't charge. Jack Smith recommending to the Attorney General that he charge him for attempting an insurrection, not to mention Mar-a-Lago and everything else. It troubles me not only because it's minor by comparison, not that it's minor, but it's minor by comparison. Two, I didn't understand how unused this legal approach is. It's a combination of state and federal law. We're not going to give you a headache with it because it gives me a headache. It's a long shot deal. And I asked Nancy Gertner, the former federal judge, this couple of weeks ago, when a district attorney on a county level, Fulton County in Georgia, is looking at criminal charges. That one's a real serious one.
That one is a serious one.
About attempting to buy those 11,000 votes in an election in Georgia. And an attorney in Manhattan, in New York City, a district attorney, and an attorney general are all contemplating bringing criminal charges against an individual. Do they all talk to each other and say strategically, this is the order in which we should go? Because my fear is that egos get in the way. I want to be first. Alvin Bragg, was criticized by he's the Manhattan DA, by two lawyers in my office who quit because I refused to bring criminal charges against the president for inflating his assets to get loans and deflating his assets when it came to paying taxes. Is he saying, well, I got to fix my reputation, so I'm going to plow ahead.
What'd she say?
And then the American, I don't remember what she said, so I shouldn't have brought it up. Sorry you asked.
I'm hanging on that. Waiting
Whatever
for
the hell she said, I'm hoping there's coordination so that the prosecutors say, let's go with the most serious charge that has the greatest likelihood of leading. Well, you don't know that. He hasn't filed these charges yet.
Yeah, but it's supposed to any moment now.
No. The only reason we know that this is imminent, theoretically, is because they have invited the likely indictee,
That's
Donald
correct.
Trump,
To
to
testify.
testify before the grand jury.
Yeah.
And every legal expert, I'm not saying I am one, believe me, says you don't do that until you're ready to go public with a charge against that individual.
Right. That's what leads me to believe they're going to start with the hush money for the
Right.
porn star.
Well, we don't know. In any case, but that's the...
I would also like to point out she is indeed, I know people always say anyone in the adult entertainment business is a star. She is indeed a star.
She is a hot
She is a
ticket.
star, okay?
What did I
She is
say
a
when I
porn
first
star.
Oh my God, she
talk
is,
show. She should have a talk show.
She
She's
is
smart.
very clever, very
clever.
funny. I saw her on was it Jimmy Kimmel where she had all those mushrooms?
Yep.
Remember that?
Yeah, I don't want.
We better not go
Thanks
into
for
that.
You remember
Thanks for
when
that,
she
Mark.
tweeted in response to one of his critical tweets, she referred to him as tiny.
Yeah.
That's all I needed to hear.
That's
It
all
made
we
my
got.
day.
He calls
speaking
her
of,
horse face, and that's the best he can do.
Yeah, I
so
know.
there you go.
Yeah.
Speaking of Donald Trump's troubles, the other thing, Jenna Ellis is one of his lawyers, and I use the term advisedly. Apparently, I'm not sure if I read this right, in an attempt to keep her law license, which it appears they're going to allow her to do, she has admitted that she made up, for example, on November 20th, 2020, it's from the New York Times, Ms. Ellis appeared on Maria Bartiromo's, how do you say it? Bartiromo,
I don't want to even
on
say
Fox
her name
Business,
anymore.
describing the evidence that Mr. Trump's legal team had collected to support their claims of fraud. We have affidavits, she said, from witnesses. We have voter intimidation. She admits she made that all up.
Right.
Not only is she admitting to 10 incidents like that where she lied to the American people and to courts, other jurisdictions about this, she apparently is going to keep her law license. And after she signed some document saying, I did these things, she's putting out public statements saying, I really didn't do these things.
Yeah.
It's outrageous.
So unlike you, Jim, who has a law degree and was a lawyer, and unlike Kim Kardashian, who
She's a lawyer?
passed the bar.
She did?
Yeah, she did, because she did that reading law
Oh,
like Abe Lincoln did. So she passed the bar.
When I think of Abe Lincoln,
Yeah,
I think of
yeah,
her.
we think
actually.
of Kim Kardashian and
Yeah.
Abe Lincoln. My daughter has been taking 2 law classes
I
at
didn't know
Bunker
that.
Hill Community
Oh, good for
College.
her.
And she's got a disability, so I've been helping her by reading to her. So
Yeah.
I have de facto audited 2 paralegal courses. So
Oh, my
I just
God.
wanna
So
put
you're
that out
ready to
there.
go,
I'm
too.
an
All
expert.
right.
I'm an expert.
Don't mess with the media maven.
And the emphasis on the ethical actions that lawyers and paralegals should do, as you know, that there's every single end of every single chapter talks about how ethical you have to be, how you don't, if you're a paralegal, you don't sign anything. Sometimes lawyers will try and do things quickly, but you have to really stick to the law. So if you recall, when she was out, this Jenna person was out making these statements, you didn't have to be an auditor of a paralegal course at a community college like me to know that she was lying, because we had the facts of what was happening. So I don't know what, and we have said during this whole Trump experience that these lawyers were going to get in trouble, right? We have been saying that all along whenever one of them has advised him or come out, especially around the election stuff. But it just doesn't seem to be happening, and
But
I don't
the problem
understand
here,
why.
these are not just lies under oath. These are lies which undermine democracy.
yes, they're big
and the
lies.
woman's going to be able to continue
And
to
she's going to have a
practice
book
law.
deal. She'll probably have a team. Once they fire everybody at Fox, she'll probably have her own show.
It's totally outrageous. Do you remember, we've said this in the air a million times, Sidney Powell, who's the most egregious of this whole group, in an attempt to keep her law license, I think in Michigan, I hope I got this right, I know I have the testimony right, her lawyer's representation, the defense of Sidney Powell by her lawyer was no one believed what she said
she
anyway.
Didn't believe it. She didn't believe it, and no one believed what she was saying. So
That's her
the
defense.
defense. Yeah, so I don't understand it.
In any case, we're talking to constitutional law expert and media maven Sue O'Connell.
So RuPaul, who's famous for RuPaul's Drag Race
Yes.
and other things, has come out to defend or in horror over all these anti-drag bill races, those who prevent drag queen shows for libraries around the country where drag queens get all dressed up and read books. So let's
play a sound from it. That RuPaul is so good on this. This is on social media, addressing a spike in hate and prejudice towards drag queens and transgender people living in the U.S. Here's RuPaul.
They think our love, our light, our laughter, and our joy are signs of weakness, but they're wrong, because that is our strength. Drag queens are the Marines of the queer movement. Don't get it twisted and don't be distracted. Register to vote so we can get these stunt queens out of office and put some smart people with real solutions into government.
Pretty
I
good.
just want to interpret that being called a stunt queen is an insult.
It is.
It's an insult. That means you don't have any real talent as a drag queen. You've just got some kind of stunt, like a good cartwheel or split that you do. Listen, I have been on the other side of drag queens being mad at me.
Why?
It's a long story, but we used to have at Big Windows this Out at Night magazine, and then we went to Jacques before all the straight wedding parties and bridal parties invaded it, and we did a photo shoot with some of the great stars of Jacques, the great drag bar, and apparently someone had promised them final approval
of the photo,
and which we usually wouldn't do, and it ran without their approval, and for a good 6 months I was the target of a number of onstage from the drag queens. So you don't want to be on the wrong side of drag queens.
Were you a stunt queen according to them?
I can't even tell you what they said, but I deserved it, so it was okay. But to RuPaul's point, besides the fact that there are a million other ways that we in dangerous ways that we expose children to sexualized content on a regular basis, and drag queens are the least. Even the worst thing that you may have seen on the internet is the least. I've seen some people post things from gun shows where you've got women holding guns with thongs on and pasties and little kids posing with them. That's okay, apparently. I mean, they're not even reading to them. They're just standing there with a gun.
And a thong.
So to be a drag queen and to be that kind of performer takes an enormous amount of courage to do in any circumstance, even before we were targeting drag queens. And now, I mean, you think about the idea of the drag queens being the soldiers on this war. Who is fighting the Nazis right now? The drag queens are fighting the Nazis.
By the way, literally, you should, JP, that happened.
Yep, the Nazis, these Nazi groups are showing up all around the country to these libraries where drag queens are having drag story hour, and the drag queens are showing up and doing this, just reading Dr. Seuss to these kids. So, if you could tell my late dad, who fought in World War II, that the future, the Nazis are going to be back, and it's, the Corporal Klingers of the world who are going to be fighting them, I think he would probably believe it.
Renee Graham, we're going to have her on Monday, a great columnist of the Boston Globe. She talked about how the first, I think she said one of the first drag queens she ever saw was Geraldine on the Flip Wilson show.
No. It's true.
Nobody made a fuss.
Milton Berle. I grew up.
Oh, that's right. Actually,
we grew
Uncle
up.
Milty.
We grew up watching Renee and I kind of all the same TV shows. We communicate a lot on social media around television shows. Flip Wilson, Milton Berle. My parents loved the Tony Curtis and
Some Like It Hot.
Some Like It Hot. I mean, drag has been a part of our entertainment mainstream forever, right? And you can make the argument that it is sexualized in some way because you are actually taking elements of some other gender and putting it on. But Bosom Buddies with Tom Hanks, that was another great TV show. They just need to relax.
By the way, Jamie just sent me this great thing. This is drag queen Bianca Del Rio. I don't know if we get it on the screen for people here. It the graphic says banning drag queens won't work. The only thing that will stop a bad guy in a dress is a good guy in a dress. So that is, I don't know who we talked to about this yesterday, but Chuck Todd. I am really worried that the Republicans are so well organized and they have so focused in almost every level of government on the most vulnerable people in our society, trans people, and drag queens, that I worried yesterday with Chuck that Democrats were going to capitulate. I also worry that Democrats are going to engage.
Right.
Because then this becomes the culture war issue. And I don't even know what the hell, the morally principled thing to do, of course, is to defend these people who are being attacked gratuitously and idiotically and viciously and sadistically by the Republicans.
Well, not making it the main issue, which is the difficult thing to do.
How do you do that?
I don't know.
It's a real tough road.
I think that the abortion issue is going to supersede everything.
I hope you're right.
And that I think Republicans are realizing that they're on the wrong side on that one, backing down. I mean, you wouldn't know it by the bills that are going on, the horrors going around the state, but I think when it comes to Election Day, there's going to be some reorganizing of one's website.
Right, but does that mean that they then move to this as something they think they can win on?
Well,
that's the danger.
That's
the
a very good point.
So,
that's a very good point.
We said on the show, I'd say 500 times, How do Kellyanne Conway and what's his name?
George
again?
Conway.
And George how do they live together?
With 4 children.
So how do they live together?
They don't. They're getting divorced.
It's all
They're
over.
near the end of their amicable divorce, according to the New York Post and other reporters. As you may know, Kellyanne was Trump's campaign manager and
yes,
then
he
worked
was.
in the White House with him. And George actually was a Trump supporter up until Trump took office. I don't know what he thought was going to happen. I think maybe he thought after he was going to lose,
What
they were
was
going to
the
win.
thing that caused him to have the change of heart?
It's unclear.
He supported him in 2016.
He supported him up.
yeah.
I honestly think that he didn't think he was going to win. I think that George Conway thought that this was going to be a great launching place for Kellyanne to start her business and have this high-profile job, and it was going to be great for their family. He actually pulled back from his law firm so that Kellyanne could manage the campaign. And I don't know if you remember, but after the last debate with Clinton and Trump, on MSNBC, someone asked Kellyanne Conway, what are you going to do after Election Day? She goes, I'm just going away. I'm going on vacation. And then they came back to her and said, are you saying you think he's going to lose? So I think that George Conway thought he was going to lose, and they were just going to coast off of their great, work that they did, just raising Trump. And once Trump got in office and it became clear to a lot of those Republicans, the never-Trumpers who changed at the end, that there was no pivot. Like he wasn't going to get presidential. I think that's when George actually got nervous and concerned about the country, and I think he was right. But clearly they've had issues in their marriage. Is a story that Ivanka Trump had kept giving them
Of
notes
therapists.
of therapists. Certainly she and her husband, Jared, must go to a lot of therapists.
So let me.
We should all go to therapists.
For
don't get me
listeners
wrong.
of a certain age, during the Clinton years,
Yeah.
there was a comparable thing, and we interviewed them both on the show. We had James Carville, who obviously a key advisor to Clinton, and his wife, Mary Matlin, who had worked for Dick Cheney, who was a prime spokesperson
For the Republicans.
For
Bush.
the Republicans,
Yeah.
for Bush in this case, yeah. And they were, in my estimation, much more creative, much more entertaining, much more...
Well, she was a normal Republican.
Yeah, it was about
they were great.
ideology too.
But
It
why
was-
did that? I mean, they're great. And
Because I think they both they were both equals, I think, in terms of,
I think they
of
were,
their
yeah.
status in their parties and in their jobs, right? They were both super smart, right?
smart.
Both of them
Don't
highly
forget,
smart.
it wasn't before Trump. A lot of us had families where half the
Right.
people were Democrats, half the people were
Right, it
Republicans.
wasn't vicious
Your
like-
neighbors.
Yeah, it wasn't vicious.
I mean,
Yeah.
Charlie Baker always talks about how he grew up in a house where I think his mother was a Democrat,
Mother
his
was a
father was a
Democrat,
Republican,
yeah.
or maybe it's the other way
no,
around.
his father worked for Reagan.
Yeah, it wasn't unusual. This is just a new thing, and you probably know, I certainly do, a lot of so-called normal Republicans who are small government, low tax kind of people. They have different economic ideas.
Yeah, but I think that I just don't think it was vicious. I don't think that there were always concerns about presidents and what they were going to do, but I don't think that anyone thought that either one of them was going to ruin the democracy, and I think that's what happened. And I think there were people who thought at any moment Kellyanne was going to leave Trump, and she never did. She just ended up leaving her husband.
Well, she was an alternate
Wasn't the kid on
facts.
Instagram every day?
That's a complicated issue,
Oh, I don't
so
know.
I
Let's
won't
stay
talk
away
about
from
that.
Okay, fine. Thank
Okay, so we have some sound.
Good parent that I am. Look
Good
at
parent that you are, that's right. We have some sound of this too. I love this. When I saw Jamie Lee Curtis challenging all the artists like Coldplay and Bruce Springsteen. We have the sound, Jim. I don't have it in front of me.
We
so-
do right here. And by the way, she's nominated for an Academy Award
Yep.
and is believed to be the front runner for that. What it says is, an icon of the early to bed crowd, here she is, that'd be Jamie Lee Curtis, on the red carpet taunting Bruce Springsteen to do a matinee show. Here it is.
What about a 12 noon concert, Coldplay? What about it? Bruce Springsteen, do a matinee. You're old.
You're old.
Why wouldn't you let me come see you, Bruce Springsteen, in your glory days, pun intended, and do it at noon or 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock matinee, theater in New York, 2 o'clock. I will come and hear your 5-hour concert, Bruce, at 2 o'clock, and I'm going to be home and in bed by 7:30.
We were talking about this. She's 64.
Yeah.
We were talking about this with Jamie this morning, the three of us and Aiden. And we were talking about, she's getting older. But it's not just role play. Young parents
Yeah.
would love a concert
Absolutely.
at noon on a weekend as opposed
well, we
to...
have theater matinees. There are all sorts
Yes.
there are movie matinees that we go to. I mean, first of all, Jamie Lee Curtis is totally enjoying this moment that she's having
I
as
agree.
a nominee for this film, which she is brilliant in.
Which film?
Everything, Everywhere.
Oh,
all
that
the
one.
time,
Oh, that's
all at
supposed to.
once.
That's the.
Yes,
That's the
it's
front runner,
brilliant.
isn't it?
Yeah,
Yes, it is.
It's brilliant, and she's brilliant in it. And she's also coming off this success on the Halloween franchise, which she went back into and really reinvigorated it. And she has been on so many interview shows and awards carpets saying things like, well, Tom Cruise, I never knew him before, I know him now. I said, hey, let's do a movie. She's producing now. She is finally in this moment where she is enjoying life to the fullest. But I totally agree. I mean, I was telling Jamie, I'm hosting these live shows for the free.
we were going to ask you about
the
next, so
Free
go
State
ahead.
Project.
Yep.
But usually I'm up at 4 a.m. and I do the morning show, take a nap and I go to bed at 8. And now I'm on the air at 7:30 at night, and it's like a 2-week gig, and I feel like I'm dying because it's so late.
We want to talk about the Free State thing you're doing in a second, the watch party. But just one.
Did you see the picture on the screen?
No. Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Of Rudy Giuliani
No.
and Donald Trump.
No.
Rudy Giuliani's in drag.
Is that real or is that
no?
not?
That's real. They did a drag. Everybody has been in drag. I don't know why. I don't know why everybody's freaking out.
You know what I
about
love, by the way? I love when you and I talk about things that only we can see.
Well, I was
When
hoping
the
you
people
could
in the library
explain
and
it.
listeners
But I
can't.
could
It's a picture of Donald Trump looking at Rudy Giuliani, who's looking quite fetching in a blonde Marilyn
Yeah, they
Monroe
did the New York-
type wig.
they did a
Best
charity
Rudy's ever
thing.
looked.
Yeah, and it was a drag queen themed comedy sketch
The
that
problem
Rudy
with
Giuliani
Jamie Lee
was
Curtis
involved
is
in.
we went through this in great detail this morning with the 1 o'clock shows.
Yeah.
Is one, you want to drink
It's the
or
drinking
get high,
and the drugs.
it's hard to do that in the middle of the day. And two,
Well, if you go
doesn't
to
it
bed
feel
at 5,
weird?
sorry.
But wait a second, getting out of a Coldplay thing or
Yeah.
Bruce Springsteen as
It's
daylight
sunset. Yeah,
still
it
is a
is.
problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so explain what the Free State. We had Allison. And
Yep.
what's the name of the photog?
Shira and Dan.
Well, Dan wasn't here, but
Yeah,
Shira
Shira
was
Springer,
here.
yeah.
They were both great. Explain who the Free Staters are and explain what you're doing.
So the Free Staters are a bunch of libertarians who, over the past decade or so, have been moving to New Hampshire so that they can bring libertarianism to New Hampshire by reducing government and all sorts of things. And we have
And there are like 6,000 of them. The goal is 20,000.
20,000. There's been an effort in the past. They're infiltrating,
Yeah.
I shouldn't say infiltrating, they're being voted onto
Yeah.
school committees and zeroing out the budget, things that libertarians would want to do. And we have an 11-part series that's up at NBC 10 Boston. They're short. They're about 11 to 12
Yeah, they're
minutes.
great, actually.
Featuring all the different players, both those who are against the Free State idea and those who are for it. And for the past week and next week and into the following week, Allison and I are hosting a Free State watch party on NECN at 7:30, where we play one of the segments, and then we have the participants from the segment
Free
come
State?
on. Yep, and then
Oh,
we talk
great.
to them sort of like in an Andy Cohen Housewives sort of way.
Oh, I love that.
Digging a little deeper into what they're thinking, and I'm only watching them as they happen. So my reactions are fresh to
Oh,
it,
that's
so I
great.
can ask questions. They're all up at NBC 10 Boston and NECN on the special section. But it's been really a very exciting project for our docu.
Why aren't you doing what you did election night when you had 30 guests on? Why aren't
Well,
you
it's
doing
kind of
that?
like that. We're just doing it over 14
Oh,
days,
I see.
20
You're
days,
dividing them up.
110 days. I
They
don't
did a
know.
great job
It's a
with
great
that series.
Check it out.
they
When
did
does it
great.
start again?
It's we're on every Monday at 7:30. You can watch. I think all the segments are up now at NBC 10 Boston, but and all the prior watch parties are up under the
We'll
special
be watching.
section.
It's great.
So thank
Good
you.
to see you, Sue
Good
O'Connell.
to see you.
Media maven Sue O'Connell is the co-publisher of Bay Windows and South End News and contributed to Current on NBC, LX, and NECN. Thanks a lot, Media Maven. After a quick break, we're very excited about this. A live music performance by Coro Allegro, Boston's LGBT allied chorus, ahead of a major show this Sunday at Newbury Street's Church of the Covenant. You want to hear this because they are great. They are next on Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at facebook.com/GBH News.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Celebrity Series of Boston, presenting David Sedaris live at Symphony Hall on April 2nd. You can hear the observations of the humorist marked by his expansive curiosity and biting wit. Tickets and more information at celebrityseries.org. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds for the citizens and businesses of the Commonwealth. You can see if you have unclaimed money at findmassmoney.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie again live. We are really about to be live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News. We're joined by the Boston-based choral group Choral Allegro. And by the way, we were told this morning there'd be 5 or 6 members of the chorus. We have roughly the same population as Fitchburg.
Right, that's right.
The group was founded in the 90s, back when LGBTQ plus friendly spaces were hard to come by. They have a terrific concert scheduled this Sunday at 3 p.m. celebrating, among other things, 100 years of the gay Boston composer David Pinkham, a trailblazer in the world of classical music. For more information on ticketing, we're going to give you this a lot. Coro, C-O-R-O, allegro.org. In a couple of minutes, we're going to hear a couple of beautiful moments from these wonderful people. But now we are joined by Choral Allegro's artistic director, David Hodgkins, as well as the group's executive director and singer, too. You sing with them, too.
Yes.
Yoshi Campbell. Yoshi, David, it's great to have you both. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Well, we got to hear you guys during the noontime
my
break,
gosh.
and you were spectacular. So elaborate a little bit, David, on what Jim said. Tell us more about what you guys do.
So we have been 30 years plus, just plus. When we started off, it was just gay, lesbian, and then we added letters as we needed to, right? As should be. We have always been on the edge, I think, artistically. We've done things that people would not tackle otherwise.
Like what?
Well, for instance, we did a piece early on by William Grant Still, African-American composer, called And They Lynched Him on a Tree. It was the Boston premiere. It had only been done 4 times in this country, even though it had been written 80 years ago, for a black chorus and a white chorus. It talks about lynching and how one can possibly unify after such horrific works. And we have done many, many more pieces like that about war, about loving, about gay love. You name it.
So, Yoshi, ordinarily we ask the guests in between the music to introduce the people performing. We don't have time for that today, needless to say. But give us a sense, who's in the choral group?
Oh, sure. Well, choral is really actually a community chorus from the LGBTQ plus and allied classical community. And we have teachers, we have professors, we have doctors.
She's scanning
and
the
students.
faces
I'm
of the people right now.
Right. Yes, and quite a range of ages. And so it's really, it's a community group that draws all the way across Greater Boston and even up into New Hampshire and New England, that people come. I drive from Gloucester every week to sing with David.
Wow.
Yes. And, I think we're just really drawn together by that mission, which is really about, disparate communities coming together through extraordinary music, and also just about building bridges together.
David, you just mentioned, or Jim mentioned, I guess, in the introduction, that you started back in the 90s when LGBTQ plus friendly spaces were hard to come by. Does that mean people didn't want you to be in their churches, or they didn't want you to perform at places? What do you mean?
Some, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that there was, there's millions of choral groups, right, around, but not necessarily that many that were specifically LGBTQ plus. So they would sing, and they had that in common, but they didn't necessarily have an affinity group with them.
But wait a second, aren't you a
is-
straight guy?
I am.
So how'd that happen? I don't mean how you
I
get
guess
straight.
nature, I don't know.
But I mean, was there any controversy about you being the leader?
Well, yeah, there was. I mean, actually in the press, I got chastised for being a white male, straight white male. Bay Windows actually made some comments about the.
Sue O'Connell.
Our media maven,
Where the hell
Sue
is
O'Connell.
Sue?
They came around. They came
They
around.
did?
Yeah.
Okay.
And in fact, Bay Windows actually had a number of. Ed Tapper from Bay Windows gave us many, many fabulous reviews.
How hard was that for you? And the group?
It's interesting. Well, I think it was probably harder for the group than it was for me. One of my conducting mentors said, you shouldn't conduct this group because it's going to pigeonhole you. And in fact, what it did was liberate me.
That's great.
Because I could do anything, and anything I wanted. And this group was always up for a challenge and willing to put themselves out there in a way that a lot of groups aren't. They're afraid to.
So what's the first selection we're going to hear here, Yoshi?
So we're going to hear a little bit from a piece that's really typical of what David was talking about, pushing the edge and doing pieces that matter. So Choral has done like 28 world premieres, and we're really proud that like 18 of them are commissioned works by underrepresented groups or by composers that are telling stories that have been silenced. And this piece that we're doing a little of today is by Sean Crouch, who is here with us, and it's from a wonderful piece called Paradise. And what he does is he draws on poetry by U.S. veteran Brian Turner, who wrote the book Here Bullet, a really fabulous book, and he put it together with poems from the 14th century Persian poet Hafez. And these poems, I believe, have been selected by Iranian-American poet Shole Wolpe. And so it's really an extraordinary piece that,
Is the first performance, though, did I read incorrectly? It's not a combination of two separate compositions?
It's two movements from Paradise.
Oh, great, okay.
And it's actually an interesting story because, I was talking to Sean, and like sometimes, a composer who does a big work, a big contemporary work, will either have it performed once, and then it kind of goes in this circular file, right? It's hard to get it have life afterwards. And there's a movement in this that has just gone viral, and people love it. You're going to hear that movement because it's very moving. But it's one thing I'm really proud of my colleague here is that I feel that David takes pieces and gives them that second, third, fourth performance that gives them life and brings them into the choral repertoire.
So you're both going to have to stand up.
Yeah.
You're going to quietly put your headphones. You have to be over there conducting this.
Yeah, I got to go to work.
Yeah, exactly. And you're going to
And I'm gonna sing.
Put them quietly on the table because they're very sensitive, if you don't mind. And then we're going to hear this beautiful group do this incredible. And we're going to talk to Sean for a second also, who's the composer here. After this is what a crew. How many are there here? Like 25 people. And on a typical, you can yell this out, like Sunday, how many people are going to be performing? Is anybody 55 or something, you said? That's unbelievable. Well, David, here's your chance. Take it away.
You will see a better day. Do not lose yourself. This senseless mind shall find a home. Our stirs the child and carries his sleeping four-year-old happy to bed under growing dark stars.
absolutely great. Wow. Well, the composer is about to go to our colleague Aiden, who was actually singing. I was not aware he was going to be part of the singing thing there. Sean Crouch, how'd that feel? Well, I don't think your mic is on. Is it on now?
It's on now.
How'd that feel there, Sean? That mic's still not on. You're going to say it a couple of more times. It is on? Oh, it's on the radio, even though we can't hear it here. You said it felt great. He actually has to come to a headset. Sean, I'm sorry about this. We screwed up a little bit. Can David, before you take the headset, let Sean put it on for a second and tell us a little bit about the piece. Now I'm going to ask him for the fourth time.
That's right.
So, Sean, you were singing as part of that. How did that feel there, Sean Crouch?
It felt great.
Oh, yes, there he is.
This is the first time I've actually been able to sing in the choir and be a part of this, so it's a whole different perspective.
Tell us about the piece a little bit.
Well, the piece was originally written for Chanticleer back in 2006, which is a professional group out in San Francisco, and they commissioned a piece from a number of composers who were around 30 at the time, and for my piece, I really wanted to do something that told the story of our vets that were coming back from the Iraq War, and it was a story that was not being told by the commercial media. So I wanted to tell what they were seeing, what my brother was seeing, who was a two-time veteran of the Iraq War. And then with Brian Turner, who is a war poet that I found shortly after, he really told that story in the way that I remember my brother saying.
How'd your brother feel about this?
When the first invasion, he was like everyone else. We're going to change the world. It's like World War II. In the second invasion, when he went back, he had a very different...
I meant, how did he feel about your work?
The few times that he had heard it, he was really moved by it. It was really quite nice.
Okay, Sean Crouch, congratulations. It's beautiful.
That was
you may now
gorgeous.
make way for your colleagues here. That was absolutely beautiful, and congratulations. We're rejoined by Yoshi Campbell and David Hodgkins after that. And there'll be another performance in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, you're doing sort of anniversaries here. So tell us what's going on, Yoshi.
Oh, well, so this concert features 3 anniversaries. One is what Jim mentioned, which is it's the centennial of Daniel Pinkham. And I'll let David talk more about Daniel Pinkham and who he is and why he's important, because he knew him.
Okay.
But we're also honoring, Vaughan Williams' 150th, and most importantly for us, we're also talking about 30 years with artistic director David Hodgkins making music with pride.
Okay. Let's hear about Daniel Pinkham then, David. Tell us.
So Daniel Pinkham actually grew up in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and he was the grandson, I think, or grandson of Lydia Pinkham, who had Lydia Pinkham tonic, which was a very famous thing back in the turn of the century, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then he went to Harvard and to other places. Terrific composer, was on the forefront of the early music movement in the 50s and 60s especially. He taught at NEC for many years. He was also the music director at King's Chapel, downtown Boston. And he was just one of those people, an out gay man in a time when that was not so easy to do. And also, as well as just being a fabulous human being, he also was just a great composer and a friend. I mean, we commissioned a work from him that we're going to be doing in May, that we have done before. But he sat down with me and said, so let's talk about this composition. So we talked about it for about 10 minutes, and then we had a 2.5-hour lunch of just talking, and he was just that kind of person. And his favorite saying was, I've risen into the elevator, now once you've gone up, you have to send the elevator back down. And he always did that. So he was always helping. He would find students at NEC that were gay but were uncomfortable or poor or whatever it happened to be, and he would help them out. He would, John Grimes, who was a wonderful timpanist, passed away a few years ago, but was the president of the Boston Musicians Union. Dan bought John his first set of timpani because John couldn't afford it, and so that's just the kind of person he was.
Is Christmas Cantata his, by the way, because I was listening to some music this morning. It is unbelievable.
Yes, it's one of his early music, early pieces, and he always says it was very popular in the 60s and 70s, especially in the 70s, I would say. And He always said that it paid his mortgage. the commission from that always paid his mortgage.
Done by the Stanford Choir, by the way. Speaking of Stanford graduate Marjorie Egan over there.
We're going to hear that, right?
We're going to hear the last movement.
Yes, we're going to hear that. And
I didn't know that. We are.
Yes.
That's what we're saying.
Yes.
Yikes.
Yes.
Oops.
Yes, Chris, by Daniel. And what do you do? Do you teach music lessons, or how do you? I'm always.
What do
curious.
you do, Yoshi?
Well, because
That's what we want to know.
Because musicians. My mother was a musician. It's very hard to went to the conservatory. It's very hard to earn a living as a musician, right? No matter how talented you are, especially if you're a classical musician. So I always wonder about how people work this into their lives. I mean, you have to practice.
Yeah.
So all these people have other jobs and things they have to do, and they have to spend a lot of time practicing. So what do you do?
So what do I do? Well, I am actually the executive director of Choral Allegro.
Yeah.
And then I am also the on the steering committee of the Network of Arts Administrators of Color, and I am a producer and a writer. So that's
you got hands in everything then, right?
Yeah.
Are you surviving on all those things? I hope.
Yep, surviving
Okay.
and having a wonderful time. And I think, David was talking about Pinkham, and one of the things I just want to mention is just the Pinkham Award.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
So this is something that we're doing to honor that story of sending the elevator back down, right? But in 2008, David and Choral Allegro on the board created an award called the Daniel Pinkham Award, and it's given annually in honor of contributions to classical music and then also to the LGBTQ plus community. And it's given us a chance to honor people like that, like Gene Robinson was one of the first awardees, who was like the first out gay bishop in the Episcopal Church.
Right.
And I remember when we gave the award and just watching the choir come around him, because he was telling us stories about things like he had to have police presence coming by his house, he and his husband's house, during that, because it was so controversial. And just hearing, like, we're singing to him, but then we all are gathering around, and he was, just touching people and like comforting them. And I'll never forget what he said. He talked about going to Memphis and seeing this statue outside the Lorraine Hotel, and of people standing on the shoulders of those who came before. And I think one of the reasons I'm really proud of David is I feel like that he has gotten that piece of our mission to amplify underrepresented voices.
What does Choral Allegro mean, by the way?
Oh, it's sort of funny. A funny story is I was walking in the Veterans for Peace St. Patty's Parade. You remember how they had that alternative parade?
Yeah, they were great.
It was more affirming. Mm-hmm. And I was coming around carrying the choral banner with a baritone in the choir, and we come around and it says Choral Allegro, and this guy comes running towards us and stumbling up, and we're like, what's going on? And he looks at us and he goes, what the is a Choral Allegro? What Choral Allegro is choral means chorus, and allegro is a music marking, right? Mm-hmm. People think of it as meaning quick. Mm-hmm. It actually means, as David said, lively. It means happy, and it means gay.
Yeah.
So Choral Allegro means gay chorus. And that's
by the way,
what we are.
if people want to find out about Sunday's event and the thing in May, it's choralallegro.org.
Yes, choralallegro.org, yes.
Fine. What are we going to hear?
So what you're going to hear in this concert is fanfares. You're going to hear brass, you're going to hear organ, and you're going to hear double choir works, beautiful works. So there'll be that, and then there'll be these two astonishing a cappella works, one by Vaughan Williams, whose 150th it is, and then this amazing contemporary a cappella piece by Sean Crouch, and then we'll go back to Pinkham.
Fabulous.
And you've got to come in May, because the piece that David was talking about is called The White Raven. And it's so incredible. It's like a celebration of the exceptional in creation. It's like all the animals, everything. And it's, he was setting Christopher Smart, who I think is a neurodivergent English poet from the 18th century that Benjamin Britten also set. You'll hear all the animals, the fishes, the whales.
Great. So you're about to perform again. Okay. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
All of your wonderful colleagues. It's beautiful. We're dying to hear this.
Now this is the Gloria in Chelsea. How do you say that? How do you say it, Chelsea's? Deo. Okay, thank you very much. From Christmas Cantata, and this is by the gentleman we've been talking about, Daniel Pinkham.
I said David before by mistake.
Gloria in Chelsea. I won't try to say it again.
Here they are. David, take it away.
Gloria in excelsis Deo, et in Deo non benedicte omnes terra, servite Domino Fidelicina, gloria in excelsis Deo, et in terra pax omnibus bone voluntatis, gloria in excelsis Deo, et in terra pax omnibus bone voluntatis, introite in conspectu eius, in exultatione, introite in conspectu eius, in exultatione, gloria in excelsis Deo, et in terra pax omnibus bone voluntatis, gloria in excelsis Deo, et in terra pax omnibus bone voluntatis. Citote quoniam Dominus ipse est Deus, ipse fecit noster ipsi nos. Citote quoniam Dominus ipse est Deus, ipse fecit noster ipsi nos. Gloria in excelsis Deo, et in terra pax omnibus bone voluntatis, gloria in excelsis Deo, et in terra pax omnibus bone voluntatis. Alleluia, 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 alleluia,
Speaking with and listening to Boston's Choral Allegro. For more information on Sunday's concert, which should be spectacular, going to be at the Church of the Covenant on Newbury Street. You get tickets by visiting choralallegro.org. I'm going to spell that for you. C-O-R-O Allegro, ALLEGRO.org. All one word, Choral Allegro. Thank you very much.
Great.
That was a
Thank you all
huge
so much.
treat
It
to
was
have you
fabulous.
here. Very much appreciate
Great.
you coming in. Okay. I always find myself saying this at the end of the show because I'm going from
It's not the
something-
end of the show.
Well, we have a little bit more.
That we do.
We do. But I'm going from something that was very sublime and very spectacular to Jim's insistence on talking yet again for about the 50th time
50th time.
about daylight saving grievances or your happiness about daylight saving.
That's right. It's
of
coming
course,
Sunday.
We're jumping ahead
Yes,
this
we are.
weekend, and over my protests, we're talking about it again. 877-301-8970. Where are you on this semi-annual chestnut topic? 877-301-8970. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. We are broadcasting, streaming, I should say, at facebook.com/GBH News.
Hi, y'all. It's Melissa Harris Perry. And on The Takeaway, we look at news a little differently. We ask tough questions and explore topics you don't always hear about. That's because we're focused on amplifying the voices of communities. And at The Takeaway, we don't just talk, we listen. We bring your voice into the conversation by asking questions about what you think. Next time on The Takeaway from WNYC and PRX.
This afternoon at 2, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you. And We Clean Heat Pumps, providing cleaning and maintenance of ductless mini-split heat pumps for the protection of air quality in homes and businesses, as AC season is here. More at WeCleanHeatPumps.com. And Feast and Fettle, a meal delivery service committed to providing fresh, home-cooked meals to Greater Boston. All orders are locally prepared and hand-delivered. Plan options at feastandfettle.com/radio.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News. Our next trip to the library will be Tuesday. Mayor Wu will make that trip on Tuesday, too, for Ask the Mayor. This Sunday, as you all know, we're turning our clocks ahead, losing an hour of sleep. That's the bad news. The good news is in favor of more sunlight in our evenings. It's a debate Marjorie salivates over every 6 months.
Yeah, right.
Excuse me, I'm speaking. She just can't wait to talk about this.
Salivates.
Is it time to do away with the clock switching forever and just stay forever on daylight saving, no S on the end of saving, daylight saving time? 877-301-8970. Ed Markey has been one of the champions. By the way, this is bipartisan. Rubio from Florida, the Republicans, the co-sponsor, the Sunshine Whatever Act. So it's a bipartisan thing.
Bipartisan.
It's good for the environment,
Good for the
obviously.
environment,
It's good
yep.
for the economy because
Yep.
you shop more. It's good for your health. It is bipartisan. And a state can vote now, as 20 have, Marjorie, to say that as soon as the federal government says it's okay to do this, we're going to switch to daylight saving time. Governor Baker, I wrote a piece for the Globe magazine last year, was not crazy about this. Do you know who in that article said she supported it?
Who?
The soon-to-be-elected Attorney General, now Governor Healy. So if our legislature does the right thing, we will be ready when Congress does the right thing. Last year, the Senate voted for it. The House didn't take it up. We want to know where you are. Are you in favor of the current insane system? Or are you in favor of year-round daylight saving time? Some people think we should stay with standard time year-round. That's ridiculous. What's your position, other than the fact that you're angry at me for bringing it up?
You just wore me down, Jim. I don't really care what we do. I just don't want to stop talking about this every 6 months.
So you support it, is what you're saying?
Well, the only problem is I've said a million times,
What's that?
and why not say it one more time?
Sure,
is
go ahead.
that if we do this, what time is the sun going to come up in February?
It's going to be dark in the morning.
It's going to be very dark in the morning. Come up at the sun won't come up until
I don't know what time. It'll be dark.
7:30,
Okay, I don't know.
7:45.
What's your point?
And you had this ridiculous notion that we should solve this problem of having the little kids trying to walk to school.
Yeah, I had a problem.
That you should say that the state should go out and pay for little teeny tiny miners' hats
with little lights on them.
Little lights on them, so they could find their way down the sidewalk to get to school.
Actually, you want a serious response to that? When I wrote that piece for the Globe last year, which I'm sure you read every word
Every
of,
word.
I spoke to the guy who is head of the Mass Association of School Committees, Glenn Kuchar. I asked him, how often in the 21 years you've been there have you heard complaints from school committee members about the early darkness?
Because they're
Zero.
not in daylight saving time
Well,
in
that's
February.
for 8 months. And second,
the sun comes up about 6:30 in the morning.
Secondly, you know why he said it?
5:30.
You know why he said it'd be really good? Because it would help create momentum for the more important thing that he supports, which is starting school at a later hour. That's the solution to the darkness in the morning. We want to know where you are on this. 877-301-8970. Let me just tell you, I know Marjorie for 25 years. The only reason she's against this is because I'm for it. And that's number one. And number two,
I'm just tired of talking about it.
you know what
Jim.
I'm doing? I've been relentless
you
about
beat
this.
these things into the ground
Exactly.
until they beg for
you know how
mercy.
you win? When the other side gives up.
Okay.
And
well,
you're about to give up.
I've given up. Whatever you want to do, Jim, clock
Just
forward,
do it
clock
and
back.
shut up, right?
Exactly.
877-301-8970. Maggie and Wayland, you're first. Hey, Maggie.
Hey, Jim, it's Pickleball Maggie.
Oh, Pickleball Maggie, how are you?
Oh, Maggie.
You can play pickleball till later
Hold
at
on.
night.
Maggie, what about the people in Wellesley that are very upset about the thwanging, the noises of
Thwack.
pickleball, thwack, whatever it is, pickleball makes. They're
Screw 'em, right, Maggie?
ruin their lives.
Right. People always have something to complain about.
Exactly. So
Okay.
what's your position on this?
At any rate, I'm conflicted because I like it light when I get home from work in the afternoon, evening, but I'm also a morning person, so I don't like it dark in the morning. But I was listening this morning, and I know Senator Markey's bill is to keep daylight saving time.
Yep.
But there was some information that I haven't followed up on how there's some scientists, I guess, who feel that regular time is better. That we should go to one time, but that regular time is better than, say...
Well, let me just tell you, there is a word for those scientists who want standard time year-round. You know what the word is?
Uh-oh.
Idiots. That's what they are. Daylight saving time. You have Marco Rubio, you have Ed Markey, and you have a unanimous United States Senate that supports daylight saving time year-round. That's good enough for me. And you can play pickleball till midnight.
Did
Maggie,
you see
thanks
the
for
note
calling.
from our staff on the screen?
No,
There was
I
a
did not.
whole segment yesterday, right here on National Public Radio,
What did they
saying
know?
that the medical community says daylight saving, as Maggie was alluding to, can be harmful Good for the economy, not on one's body. Our body clocks tell us to get up with the sun, and we would be chronically thrown out of sync with the sun, which can lead to a variety of health problems, sleep experts say.
You know who's married to one of the most prominent physicians in the United States of America?
Who?
Senator Ed Markey.
Senator Ed Markey.
Enough said.
Okay.
877-301-8970. Maggie, thank you for your call. We appreciate this. I want to repeat, the Senate voted unanimously to make this move. It's only because Nancy Pelosi, whom we both respect, didn't take the matter up that it didn't make it to Joe Biden's desk. By the way, his home state of Delaware is one of the 20 states that has adopted daylight saving time should the federal government.
What was Pelosi's problem with this?
I assume she had other things to do.
John in Gloucester, what do you think, John?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah.
First-time caller, long-time listener.
Thank you for both.
Yeah, and today I waited for this segment because I knew you were going to talk about it today.
It never ends, John. Never ends.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm feeling like I'm more and more in the minority. I disagree with you, Jim.
Oh.
And, I think there are, reasonable ways to argue about this, but some of the arguments are really ridiculous.
Like what?
One of them being yours.
There you go, John.
The way you come across is the whole world should change, so you should get what you want.
Well, that is a fair summary.
John,
that is an accurate
you captured
summary.
the whole essence of
John,
Boston Public
are
Radio.
you aware that we already have 8 months of daylight? Hello?
Yeah.
We already have 8 months of daylight saving time, thanks to Ed Markey sponsoring legislation that extended it from 6 months a bunch of years ago. So that is the trend. That is the trend that we're going in.
Yeah,
John.
no, I'm afraid that's true.
Yeah.
I'm afraid that's true.
What's your problem with this, John? What's the problem with it?
The previous caller mentioned my major concern,
What is it?
getting up in the dark or having kids go off to school in the dark. We used to live in Cleveland, which is on the western side
That's right.
of
Terrible.
the Eastern time zone, and it was very bad, very hard. And it was the most depressing day of the whole year, the change to daylight savings time, because you were working towards sunrise was earlier and earlier, and then slam, you're pushed back a whole
but John, you're only talking.
It's through. He's thought it through.
I know he's thought it through, but John, you've only thought about half the equation. If you read my excellent piece in the Globe magazine a year ago, the opening line says, "I left work at GBH at 1 Guest Street at 4:10 in the afternoon, and you know what it was when I walked out of the building, John? Pitch black." So that's
okay.
That's the problem with your solution, John. We loved your first call, though. Make another one soon. Thank you so much for calling.
Some people agree with you here. Eileen from Somerville, she agrees with you. But other people are saying they just want to pick a time. Amber from Worcester says, pick a time and stick with it.
That's this.
I hate this changing. My dog hates it. The whole thing is stupid.
Well, can I tell you one thing? The argument for a standard thing, 12 months, whether it's the other standard time, which I guess what John wants, or what I want, which is daylight saving time, is very strong because you've read the research. All the research says it's bad for your heart. It's bad for, there are more auto accidents because your body's rhythm or some such thing doesn't move with the hour shift, whether it's ahead or back. And so staying with one system is far better for both our economic and our physical health.
Okay.
What do you think of that? What do you mean, okay?
Whatever, Jim. Like
Okay,
I said,
fine.
I've thrown the towel on this. I've heard every argument now about 150 times.
By the way, no one complains more than you when you leave work and it's dark. You text me and you say how upset you are that it's dark.
What are you talking about?
Oh, that wasn't you.
Jan
That actually
Ellis
wasn't
that works
you.
for
No, I thought
President
about-
Trump, making up entire stories?
Ted in
from whole
Worcester, what's
cloth?
up? Ted.
Hi, yes, I'm sorry, I have to disagree with Jim.
Yeah.
If you go to daylight savings time year-round, you're not going to have sunrise in the dead of winter until 8:30 in the morning.
So sleep a little later, Ted.
Well, if you want to change the entire clock around so everything happens a little later, fine, but then you're back where you started.
Yeah. So what would you prefer? What's your... I'm sorry, go ahead.
So my point would be if you don't want to go through the changes, and it's a little bit disruptive to change by 1 hour twice a year. It's not any worse than people survive jet lag when they travel. So I don't see that as an incredibly compelling argument. But if you want to have one time, go with the standard solar time. The reason we switched to daylight time when we have 15 hours of light is to make more use of it in the evening when people find it more useful.
Hey, Ted, don't go away, because you just poo-pooed the changing of the clocks. Let me read to you, not from what I wrote, from the Globe editorial today, actually. The ritual of changing clocks twice each year isn't just disruptive and annoying, but costly and dangerous. It causes workplace injuries to rise and workplace productivity to drop. The economic toll from the biannual disruption of workers' sleep schedules is estimated to be upward of $433 million each year. So while it pains me to say that either alternative around the year would be an improvement, because I don't want the other alternative, it's the hour ahead and hour back that is most damaging, Ted. Check out the Globe editorial. It's really good this morning. Ted, thank you much for your call.
You know, I think you should plan ahead, Jim.
What?
When
I am planning
When
ahead.
the day happens, you depart this mortal coil, you shove on your headstone, Jim Browdy, daylight saving
That's nice.
crusader. Listen to people who've written, and they're sick of this too.
You're only
This
going to
is-
read the ones who are against me,
That's
obviously.
right. Terry from Westport. Regarding daylight saving time issue, I totally agree with Marjorie. Can we stop beating the subject to the ground till it begs for mercy? Here's Maggie from Providence.
By the way, we'll be blocking Terry here in the future.
When I was driving to work this morning, I was thinking, God, I
Do I
hope
have to listen?
Jim wants to skip over the daylight saving discussion. I'm with Marjorie. That would be me.
Yeah,
Do what
this
you
is
want, but I do vote for permanent saving,
Oh.
daylight saving. She's with you,
Wait a
Jim.
second,
She just
she's
wants you to
with
stop
me?
talking about it.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. This is from Paul. Jim has taken
the show's almost over with you reading all these texts.
Jim has taken on daylight saving time like the late, great Jerry Williams took on seatbelts.
Yeah.
He never stopped talking about seatbelts. He was a great talk show host at RKO.
Do you know how you win battles in this world, Marjorie? You're relentless.
You know what?
What?
What happened with seatbelts?
What happened?
Jerry Williams
He
lost. He
That's
lost.
right.
He lost. We got our seatbelts.
That's a
Let's
good
go to
point.
Chad in Philadelphia.
Oh, my hometown. He must
Hi.
be with me. Hi, Chad. What's up?
Hey, Jim, Marjorie, love your show.
Thank
I
you.
am 100% on the side of permanent daylight savings time.
Oh, good.
There you go.
For
You can
me-
explain.
Take your time,
Well,
Chad.
for me, all right, I'll take my time. I'm the father of a 4-year-old, and for me, changing the time isn't just 2 days. It is a weeks-long process of getting him readjusted to the schedule.
That's a great
of
point.
New bedtime,
Great point.
new wake-up time. Plus, I hate how early it gets dark in the wintertime. So
There you
100%
go.
there.
So, Chad, let me ask you, you're the smartest caller we've had today, obviously. How do you react to somebody who has an opposing view solely because she's aggravated that I talk about it twice a year? How do
That's
you
a good
react
enough
to
reason
that?
for me.
How do you react to that, Chad?
I think the best way is just to get on board, and then you won't have to talk about it so much.
That's
Chad,
right.
you're a beautiful person.
That's right.
Thank
I
you
tell
for
you
the
what,
call.
if they do
It
pass
was
this
excellent.
legislation, I'll be the happiest person in the world. Never have to talk about it. Never have to talk about it.
Why don't you
again.
read some more critical text? Go ahead.
George Santos wants Jim to know that he invented
The
daylight saving time.
Thank
There's
you.
no opportunity to be missed for pulling in George Santos. Let's go. Are we out of time?
We have time for one more quick one.
Jane from Groton, thank you for
Hey,
calling.
Jane.
Hi, I'm with you 100%, Jim. I know
Thank you,
you're
Jane.
short for time. And one thing that nobody even mentions, within a time zone, there's a difference when whether you're on the eastern or the western side of the time zone. So
Mhm.
here in Massachusetts, we're on the eastern.
We are.
It gets dark so early in the winter.
Exactly right.
It's crazy. I have friends in, western side of the time zone, and it's still light about an hour and 15 minutes later for them. So it's, if everyone can adjust to the new brighter day longer in the winter, and I think we
Jane,
should just keep it at
You are
daylight
Groton's
saving.
best. Let me just say that was
I-
fabulous. Thank
I
you.
had to pull over to make this call. I feel
Beautiful.
just as passionately as you do, Jim.
I love you for it. Jane,
Well,
thanks for the call.
Everybody's going to lose an hour of sleep on Saturday night into Sunday morning. We'd all thank Jim. Lose an hour
But if I
of
get
sleep.
what I want, it'll be the last time, Marjorie.
Okay, Jim.
We're done.
Good luck to you.
We're going to talk about this Monday and Tuesday,
Okay.
too.
We want to mention something, though, before we
I know
leave.
we
It's
do.
coming up next week, March 16th to 18th, is a composer, Julia Wolf's BSO co-commissioned show called Her Story.
It's all centered on this idea of paying tribute to centuries of ongoing struggle for equal rights, representation, and access to democracy for women in America.
Featuring the Lorelei Ensemble.
Oh,
We've
they've been
had
on
them
the show.
They are
They're
absolutely
great.
fantastic. We had them for Live Music Friday around this time last year. You can find that performance on our YouTube channel, and they're great. The Lorelei Ensemble.
They are fabulous. And actually, one of their numbers works across the hall, I should say, at the Classical Music Station. So her story is the latest in a series of compositions by the woman that Marjorie mentioned, the great Julia Wolfe. You can get tickets and find out more information at Lorelei, Lorelei ensemble.com.
I want to thank everybody that came down to the library.
Thank you all
today.
for coming. We appreciate
I want to thank all the people that had to listen to Jim's 19,000 discussion of daylight.
By the way, I'll
saving
stay
time.
after the
You know
show
what
if
you
anybody
need?
wants to talk
You need
about
new material. That's what you need. You need new material. Okay.
Did I get unanimous vote in the Senate last year? You notice it came 2 days after my Globe magazine piece?
That's right.
Think that's a coincidence?
Marco Rubio
I think
called
not.
up and says, if Jim Browdy wants it, then
good enough
I'm
for
with
me.
him all the way. Okay, Monday we're going to have a politics panel. Jesse Marmel and Jennifer Nassour going over the political stories of the day. Globe columnist Renee Graham. She is a great columnist in the Boston Globe. She's going to be with us. I don't think we've ever had her on before. She's really good. And the director of the new Boston Strangler movie, Matt Ruskin.
Oh, great.
Yeah, we'll also hear from the Revs, Irene Monroe and Emmett G. Price III, and do an Oscars debrief with our film critic, Odie Henderson.
Oh, from the Globe. Great.
Absolutely.
I didn't know that was happening. Great.
Yes, he's been on a couple of times with us.
Great.
He's really good. Our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker. Our executive producer is Jamie Bologna. We want to thank the BPL team, that's a group down here at the library that helps us out. Evelyn Brito, Sai Patel, and Brad Lewis. Thank you very much to all you guys. Jim, good luck on the daylight
Well, I have one
saving.
more thing to say. People
What?
ask me what the website is. You go to jimisrightonDaylightSaving.com. Let me repeat that. Jim is right on daylightsaving.com
Okay.
or .org or .anything.
Okay.
And sign up for something.
Okay, you might go to moveongym.org. You
What?
might try that as well. I'm Marjorie Egan.
I am Jim Browley. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll see
Thanks
you
for
on
tuning
Monday.
in. Hope you can tune in on Monday. Bye-bye.